10 a.m.
It's Friday, June 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 16 degrees, 17 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Well, we have a couple of breaking news stories for you this morning. In the west end of Ottawa, a toddler abducted overnight, the subject of a province-wide Amber Alert that likely woke you up early this morning. The alert itself has been filled with fast-changing, sometimes conflicting information. Here is City News reporter Jason White following this developing story.
This has been a fast-changing story all morning. Ottawa police now say that 11-month-old Abby Mathusi was last seen with her mother around 11:15 last night near Carling and Pinecrest. Abby is described as an Indigenous girl with short black hair. She was last seen wearing a blue onesie with black pants and white or pink socks. Police are especially worried about her because she has a feeding tube in her stomach and cannot have regular baby formula. A ground search of the area around Carling and Pinecrest has been underway since early this morning, with a large police presence in the area. Police had said that the girl was believed to be with her grandmother. They now say that is not the case. And there's no vehicle description in this Amber Alert. Police have withdrawn an earlier statement about a potential vehicle color. But anyone who has seen either the girl or her mother is asked to contact Ottawa Police or Crime Stoppers. Jason White, City News.
Well, City News time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Increasing heat and humidity for us today. We're headed for a heat wave. The high today, 28, will feel like 33. Chance of showers or thunderstorms for the afternoon and early evening. Clear out tonight, 16 for the low, and then hot, hazy, humid for the weekend. Highs in the 30s, approaching humidex near 40. For today, the high near 28.
And right now in Ottawa, 16 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 17. City News time, 9:02. Also breaking news this morning from StatsCan. It says the economy lost 68,000 jobs in May as lockdowns to slow the COVID-19 contamination continued. The unemployment rate, 8.2% in May. That was up from 8.1% in April. Expecting some more figures, including city unemployment rates coming up through the morning. Stay with City News for the latest on this developing story. Anyone in Ontario who received an AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine have their choice. You can book your second dose of the same vaccine, or you can get a Pfizer or Moderna shot, and that begins today. The province updated the guidance on second doses of the vaccine this week. Second dose bookings are available at pharmacies as of today for anyone who received their AstraZeneca vaccine 12 weeks ago. People can book AstraZeneca second doses by contacting the pharmacy or primary care provider where they receive shot number 1. Those opting for an mRNA vaccine can schedule that through your participating pharmacy that offers Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. More information could be released today about last week's announcement by a Kamloops area First Nation that human remains may be in an unmarked grave at the site of the now closed Indigenous residential school.
The chief of the Tk'emlúps-te-Secwépemc First Nation says the remains may be those of 215 former students forced to attend the former Kamloops Indian residential school. Chief Roseanne Casimir hasn't hinted at the subject of today's update, but it's due at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Yesterday, RCMP said they had opened a file and want to investigate while allowing the Tk'emlúps to lead the probe. The retired senator who chaired Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission has already criticized the Mounties' actions, saying they're intimidating people and should be looking for lost records instead. Beth Layton, The Canadian Press.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinions.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning. I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. It is Friday, June the 4th. And as you've heard in our news break, of course, we are keeping an eye on the Amber Alert for the young 11-month-old baby that is missing as part of that Amber Alert. Certainly, I received that Amber Alert this morning at about 10 to 4, and we've been following that story, and we will follow it all day long. Hopefully, it resolves itself sooner than later. Veteran reporter Jason White is on this story, so we will bring you any breaking news as soon as we hear it. We have a very, very busy show for you today. Sarah Eleanor Davis is going to join us a little bit later in the show. She's the Executive Director of Cornerstone Housing for Women. There is an emergency there, and we need to absolutely hear her story. She's going to be coming up around 9:45 this morning. First now, we're going to go to Justin Piche. Hi, Justin.
Hi there.
Justin Piche, of course, is the Associate Professor of Criminology at uOttawa. We always speak, when we speak, we talk about jails and we speak about inmates and, of course, COVID-19. You have some updates for us, Justin.
Yeah, I do. But just to begin, I'd just like to say that, if we weren't constantly increasing the police budget in this city, as well as increasing the amount of money the province is spending on building new jails, we'd have more money for shelters like the one that's underfunded and potentially being closed soon that you've just mentioned. And we need to do better to build communities. As far as the outbreak at OCDC goes, it was preventable. There's at least 27 prisoners and a staff member that have been diagnosed with COVID-19. The OCDC has only actually started offering vaccines to prisoners 2 weeks ago. In other jails across the province started offering those at the end of March. In April, OCDC is one of the last 3 jails across 25 in the province to get access to COVID vaccines for prisoners. And now we're seeing a large outbreak here. And of course, another one that didn't offer vaccines soon enough, the Lindsay Super Jail, also has a large outbreak, the largest one in the province. So, there's been a bungling of the vaccine rollout. I'm not sure why I, as a professor that's been sitting in my house for much of the pandemic, got a vaccine before any single vaccine was offered to a prisoner. It doesn't make sense to me, given what we know about the risk of COVID transmission and outbreaks in these congregate settings where social distancing is, next to impossible, if not impossible most times. And the ventilation is poor and it's shared, right? So, and
we've heard as well that there's obviously many, many reports over the years that there's been overcrowding at the jail, etc. We know early on when you and I spoke, let's say a year ago, that they were trying to limit the number of people at that jail. Has that continued to happen, Justin?
So during the first wave, OCDC can hold 585 people, although that's like double and triple bunking. During the first wave of the pandemic, there was fewer than 300 prisoners within weeks of the pandemic being declared. And then, right now it's sitting around 400 prisoners. So it is less capacity or lesser use of capacity than normally. But, there's still... it was double and triple bunking before, so there's still, more people than what the space was originally intended to accommodate. So, that's certainly an issue, and we've been hearing from our jail hotline callers that, in terms of the vaccine rollout itself, that they just don't have the information to make informed decisions. In some cases, we were hearing from folks saying that they didn't even know which vaccine was being offered to them. Little to no information about benefits or side effects. And a number of them, have health conditions and want to know before they put something in their body if it's going to exacerbate those health conditions. Mm-hmm. Folks who've experienced discrimination, within the healthcare system and society more broadly, don't lack trust in the system and certainly healthcare at OCDC. So there's a whole host of factors here that are really driving the vaccinations, the potential uptake of them down, and we need to do something about it. We need to provide information that's robust so people can make informed decisions. It needs to come from people and services that folks trust. When it comes from inside the jail, folks have, good reasons, I think, to distrust what's being presented to them when they have information at all. Could you imagine making a decision about a vaccine in an information vacuum, given the limited things that they're able to potentially see on TV with respect to, side effects of vaccines that have been in the news lately? They don't have the access to information that we have, right? The ability to to do their own research. So, I'm not surprised to see that vaccine hesitancy is over 50% at the jail right now. And this is just going to continue if we don't address it, right? And as long as the pandemic's continuing behind bars, it's going to continue outside of it, deepening the impacts for all of us.
So were you hoping, Justin, that when the congregate living vaccines were rolled out, that OCDC and other jails across the province would have been in that list, if you will?
I mean, I don't know why Ottawa Public Health just decided to do the rollout a few weeks ago here at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre. Other public health authorities made different decisions about timing. But fundamentally, the Ontario Solicitor General, which runs the jail, made a decision to devolve that responsibility to local public health authorities in terms of timing. And then the local public health authorities give advice to the institution to then roll out these vaccines. And this has just been bungled. And we need novel approaches to get the information out there and to get, the vaccines taken up more than they have been, right?
Let's talk about and Justin, let's talk about the rollout in terms of staff as well, because of course the staff is in contractors would be the, the people bringing it in, obviously, right? So what's the rollout for staff and contractors?
Between staff and also people who are newly admitted to the jail as well.
Of course.
And transfers. But it seems that the vaccines were, according to Ottawa Public Health, were offered at the end of April to staff who weren't able to otherwise get them in the community at an earlier stage. Assuming we don't know. I mean, this is part of the issue too, is we actually don't know how many vaccines have been administered to staff and prisoners across the province because the province doesn't disclose those figures publicly. The government of Quebec, for instance, has publicly disclosed in recent months how many prisoners are offered vaccines. They don't do that for staff. Correctional Service Canada has done similar things for prisoner uptake of vaccines so that it can be transparent, so that we know what kind of issues we're up against.
Thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this. We really will be following this story, but we do have some breaking news we'd like to share with you. We understand that a police have been seen retrieving a crying baby from the area of Pinecrest and Carling. The baby, we understand, has been taken to an ambulance. The baby's identity at this point is unconfirmed. This is giving us some hope here, though, on City News. So we will be following that story for you. Our veteran reporter, Jason White, I know will be on this, so we will look for his next report as well. This is something that's obviously concerned many, many people this morning. Many people were woken up this morning at about 10 to 4. When did you get it, Dave? Did you get the Amber Alert this morning at about 10 to 4, or was that sort of my time?
It was about 4 o'clock for sure.
So
my wife and I were both woken up by it. So
yeah, and I think my phone certainly buzzed. It woke me up. I actually haven't been to sleep since, and I think worried about this 11-month-old baby, Abby Mathusi, and she is an Indigenous baby, and she is somebody that is having a feeding tube, so she was not being able to be fed in a normal way a baby would be fed. With baby food. So we were really happy to hear this news, although the identity has not been confirmed. But certainly this is news that is providing us a little bit of hope this morning, isn't it, Dave?
Absolutely. Any update right now, I think a lot of people in Ottawa are keeping an eye on this for sure.
Absolutely. We will be following this story. Once again, we have a very, very full show for you today. We're going to be speaking with Jeff Turner in regard to National Kindness Week. There's some pretty big and exciting developments there. We're also going to be speaking with Brian Hamilton, a winemaker from Kin Vineyards out in beautiful Carp. We're going to talk to him about some damage that has been inflicted on local crops during this time. And of course, as I spoke about earlier, we're going to speak with Sarah Eleanor Davis, Executive Director at Cornerstone Housing for Women. You will not want to miss that story. Stay with us here on City News. We're going to be following this Amber Alert story. Stay with us here on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow here on City News and Rogers TV. We are following the breaking news story regarding this Amber Alert. You may have been woken up this morning by that at around 10 to 4 was my time. My producer here, Dave Tripp, received it around 4 o'clock as well. We have been following this story this morning. Our City News veteran reporter, of course, Jason White, has been following this story. We understand police have been seen retrieving a crying baby from the area of Pinecrest and Carling, and we know from OPS, that's where the baby had gone missing this morning. The baby was taken to an ambulance, which is good news. However, I will tell you, the baby's identity has not been confirmed, and police are expecting to update us soon. I know Jason White is on this story, and he will bring us the absolute latest. So stay here on City News for this Amber Alert for Abby Mathusi, 11 months old. She has a feeding tube. This was a very urgent situation, so we are following this story. We're going to shift gears a little bit and speak with Jeff Turner. Hi, Jeff.
Morning, Sam. How are you?
Good morning. As you know, Jeff, we may have to break into our conversation today to bring the breaking news regarding the Amber Alert. But let's talk about this incredible initiative you have worked for years on, which is National Kindness Week.
Well, before we do, I hope that is Abby, and you break in and tell everybody that they found her and she's okay. So I don't mind at all if that happens. That'd be great news.
Absolutely. You and Rabbi Bolka have been, working very, very hard for many years. And of course, we're all thinking about Rabbi Bolka. We know that he's dealing with some serious health issues right now. But you received some incredibly good news this week.
Sam, we did. And thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for asking.
Jeff, I'm sorry I have to interrupt you. We have just heard, this is such good news. The OPS say the 11-month-old girl has been located safely. This Amber Alert has been canceled. This is the news we were waiting for in this city this morning. Waking up this morning at 4 a.m. to know that an 11-month-old baby was missing is not the news we want to hear. To know that she's been located safely is the news we all needed today. And I am so thrilled to bring that news. I know Jason White will give us an update as well, so stay with us here for the 9:30 news. But Jeff, let's start our conversation again. And that is really the best way we want to start this call today, in terms of, knowing that Abby is safe. Let's talk about National Kindness Week. I appreciate your flexibility this morning, Jeff. National Kindness Week, of course, yourself and Rabbi Bolka have worked for years on this. And once again, you've got some great news. Share it with us, Jeff.
Well, I'm happy to. And on the heels of that news, I'm glad to. So this conversation, the Rabbi and I spoke about this when Kindness Week in Ottawa was started when I was working with United Way over 15 years ago. And we'd had a great week. And he said, Jeff, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could make this bigger, do something on a national scale? Well, time passed and we tried a few times, but nothing really came of it till he and I reconnected with Kind Canada. Anyway, we undertook it at that time, and that was about 5 years ago. It was actually August of 2017. Rabbi and I went to see Senator Jim Munson. After getting guidance, I did, from a number of people that trying to get a bill in this country passed in Parliament is really time-consuming and challenging. And I know because we've been lobbying for about 8 months by that point with MPs and not going real far, and got this advice to go to the Senate. Went to Jim Munson and he said, I love this. I'm on it. Can't wait. So a couple of years, and these things do take time, but even at great speed, we did end up getting it passed in the House of Commons. It was unanimous. It had passed in the Senate previously, and it had actually, I should say, with Jim's efforts a couple of years ago, that been Parliament prorogued, and the bill was dropped. So we started again. And you spoke of Rabbi's illness. It's his cancer. And when Rabbi announced his circumstances in December, I spoke with Jim, and we said, let's really put a push on and try and get this going again. And he did that very week, and it moved along to the Senate well. And then we found folks in the House of Commons really very obliging, and it was a vote, and it was unanimous. And, Sam, I watched it all unfold live. It was just, it was extraordinary. And every party in the House had a representative with a 10-minute time limit to talk about the bill. And they said the most incredible things about acts of kindness, about people being kind, about Rabbi Bolka, and the whole notion. It was just, everyone got up in turn supporting it. It was just lovely. And then at the end, so I'm watching it all, it's like a suspense drama unfolding before you, right? And then suddenly the speaker stands up and reads a document and says the bill's passed.
Wow.
And there you go. We are the first country in the world whose government has declared a specific week of the year dedicated to kindness. And it's the third week in February.
Is there anything more Canadian, Jeff?
Hockey, maybe, but...
True. Okay, we'll go with hockey. Hockey, then kindness. It just really speaks, I think, to Canadians, and I think it speaks to the great work that, of course, you and Rabbi have done. But I think the timing of this is really important, and I think it's an important opportunity for Canadians to really recognize each other and share this time, for sure.
Well, you're absolutely right. And in fact, in listening to the speakers, that was a recurring theme. The MPs were standing in the House and, wherever they were, actually, because some of them were remote, obviously. But they often spoke about acts of kindness they'd seen in their communities. People reaching out to neighbors. And you're right, the timing has been brutal. This pandemic has taken its toll on people at so many different levels. And you'll know that there's been a lot of folks encouraging kindness through this time, but acts of kindness have prevailed genuinely and sincerely around the world, but certainly in this country and in Ottawa. It was so refreshing and wonderful to see. And the MP spoke about that this has been a very tough time, and we really could use more kindness right now. It helped us get through this even more. And we're a good country for that. There's incredible support for philanthropy in this community, as you know, and this country. But, people talk about Canadians being friendly, but that's not the same as being kind. Mm-hmm. And, this has been brought out in the pandemic that people really are, helping people get groceries, do yard work, and in the winter shoveling walkways, just even phoning people and checking on folks that live independently. It's been wonderful. And this is an opportunity for us now going forward in the third week of February now to start planning for, but to focus on that. And the goal originally with Kindness Week was, Rabbi was asked, why a week, and what does that mean? I said, well, our hope is if we get people focusing on, if we talk about it, we get people engaged during the week, and the week is better than the day in many respects because it starts to encourage habits. Mm-hmm. But Rabbi always said, if we get people focusing on it for that time, hopefully what they do during that week will stay with them.
It really is so special, for sure. Have you had a chance, or does Rabbi know this news?
Oh, great question. We haven't been speaking, but we've been emailing a fair amount. And so we got the notice just literally the day before it was going in the house from Senator Munson's office, and a link. So we sent it to Rabbi Bolka, and Jim and his team and myself and Rabbi watched it all unfold. And as it came about, it took almost an hour. By the time it did, it was just so incredibly emotional. And I wrote the group, I said, am I the only one crying?
That's awesome. Jeff, I'm so happy for you, and of course happy for Rabbi Bolka. Thanks for updating us today on National Kindness Week. We will definitely stay in touch with you. We'll want to know all the details.
Thank you, Sam, and take care of yourself. Stay well.
Thank you so much. We're coming up to the 9:30 news. Andrew Boyle is going to be bringing you an update in terms of the Amber Alert. Stay with us here on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, June 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 18 degrees, also 18 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news this hour. The 11-month-old, the subject of an Amber Alert, has been found safe. The OPP says the Amber Alert for the missing 11-month-old is over. Once again, the child found safe. Your phone likely went off in the wee hours this morning concerning this child, who has a feeding tube and went missing late last night from the Carling Pinecrest area of Ottawa. Once again, the Amber Alert for that missing child has been cancelled. The 11-month-old has been found safe. StatsCan says the economy lost 68,000 jobs in May amid the ongoing lockdown to slow the spread of COVID-19. The agency also says the unemployment rate has climbed up a little bit in our country to 8.2%. That is just slightly above the 8.1% unemployment rate in April. Ontario residents who received a first dose of AstraZeneca vaccine can now book their second dose of this COVID vaccine for any shot. Second dose appointments are open starting today for those who received AstraZeneca 12 weeks ago. People can book the same vaccine or opt for the mRNA, that would be a Pfizer or a Moderna shot instead. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm filling in for Rob Snow on the Rob Snow Show. I'm Sam Laprade here on City News. We wanted to talk a little wine this morning, so we've gone out to Kin Vineyards and speaking with Brian Hamilton. Hi, Brian.
Good morning. How are you today?
Well, you've got the title of winemaker. That's a pretty good title.
It's a fabulous job that I've been doing for about 20 years.
Amazing. For those that may not be familiar with Kin Vineyards, whereabouts are you located?
We are in Cart, so just a little bit north of the Diefenbunker. For those of you who've been out to the Cold War Museum, we're just kitty corner to them.
And I hear some great things are happening there, but you certainly have had some challenges this spring and just recently. How has it affected the grape crops?
Well, this year has been a little bit of a challenge in terms of some frost damage in one of our vineyard blocks. Frost is sometimes an issue, especially in early seasons when we've had lovely warm weather. We've seen probably 2 weeks of growth that we wouldn't normally have seen this time of year. And so during the cold events of last week, we did receive about 25% shoot damage in our Chardonnay.
So walk me through that impact to your business from that damage.
Well, unlike annual crops like corn or soy, for instance, that can simply just be replanted once they're damaged, vines are, of course, perennial. So our goal at this point will be to maximize the fruit that we get from, the 75% of the vineyard that was unaffected by frost. And then for the block that was affected, we'll just provide nutrients for the soil. We do grow organically and biodynamically here. So a lot of the additions are natural nutrients and botanical teas. We want to actually strengthen that vine for next year and make sure that it survives the winter.
Are you the only vineyard in the area to be affected, or are you hearing that from others?
No, there are a number of other vineyards in the area growing slightly different varieties than Kin Vineyards, but certainly most of us have experienced some degree of frost damage. It's largely a consequence of where the vines are located. Certainly on our property, the lower altitude region is where cold air pools. So depending on where you're growing your vines, it's those low spots that are at greatest risk.
Is it just me? I just find Ottawa wasn't really known for wine, if you will. And now we're seeing, the great, obviously, Kin Vineyards. We're seeing lots of other wineries in the area. This is exciting not only for you, of course, as a winemaker, but exciting for us as a city and maybe even for tourism in the future.
Absolutely. No, it's been a huge eye-opener for a lot of people who just assume that because we have cold winters in Ottawa, that we're really not growing vines. And in fact, there's many different varieties that flourish quite well in the region that are quite hardy and don't need any special attention during the winter. We are, of course, quite unique at Kin. We're growing the province of Ontario's most northerly plantings of the French varieties of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So our vines are actually buried underneath the earth after harvest, so in order to protect them from the cold. And it's a unique opportunity for myself as a winemaker to be able to, to bring really unique wines from a region that is completely new and emerging in the wine scene in Ontario.
How will the loss of the 25% crops affect the price of wine when it comes to the tables and the dining rooms of people that are purchasing?
Really, the pricing isn't going to change. Pricing is kind of it's a multivariable target, really, and we have healthy inventory of wines that we have made last year and in previous vintages, so we certainly have a lot of inventory to offer people, and we don't really like the prices to fluctuate very much. We want people to be able to realize that, as a quality producer of wine, even in hard years, we're still going to make good wine. We might make less, but that you can kind of assume that the prices are going to be stable.
Mm-hmm. I know you and I and the rest of Ontario are waiting to find out about when we can find some normalcy and when we can sort of get back to those things that we love. I would assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Kin Vineyards would have an opportunity to have people there when the province, of course, says it's okay, because you've got a great open space.
We do. We actually like to label it as Ottawa's largest patio, because we are on a 48-acre property, of which 10 acres is planted to vines. But we've also this year partnered with Joe's Italian Kitchen, who is creating an outdoor kitchen space with an extensive patio, so that even when we open, which is looking like we'll be open on June 14th because of that outdoor patio, it's going to be a really great season to come out and just enjoy the weather. And I know that we're all pretty tired of being at home.
We certainly are. And I think we're looking for those new opportunities. And I'm hoping, in terms of tourism dollars, that, we may not be able to go very far, but I'm hoping people, play tourist, if you will, in their very own town.
Absolutely. Staycations. And I know that I'm not the only one that sees it this way. I'm sure that it's quite a common experience now. Staycations are kind of, they're probably what's increasing most in people's mindset, instead of taking on the challenges of more expensive travel, perhaps a little bit more challenge with, making sure that you're vaccinated and going abroad. Just stay at home. And I think a lot of times people aren't really aware of what we have in our own backyard. You really don't have to travel that far to find some amazing activities.
For sure. When I think about winemaking, I mean, I am not obviously a winemaker, so we're leaning on you and your expertise today, Brian. But, obviously the frost has been a big factor, like you mentioned. What are the other challenges when you're creating these wonderful wines?
Well, certainly in Ontario and where we are north in the province, our uniquest challenge is, of course, winter survival. So you won't find a lot of vineyards are having to bury their vines. That's certainly one challenge that we fully embrace here at Kin, because we're able to grow varieties that are most notably known to express the uniqueness of place, or the sense of terroir or distinctiveness in wine. We also have challenges with climate change, in terms of there being an increasing number of days each year that are dry. We are a dry farmed vineyard. We do not irrigate. There's many reasons that we don't do that. But apart from young vines that need that additional water, we don't necessarily give them any more than they need. So that's one challenge. And certainly we have embraced a more sustainable, organic, and biodynamic approach to farming, so we don't rely on any synthetic chemicals of any kind. And it's really a philosophy of farming that I've been embracing for my 20 years as a wine grower. And so it has to align with your principles and your values.
I love that so much. I think consumers really like that too, I'm assuming.
I would say that it's no longer a niche market, that it's quite mainstream now, looking for these more sustainable products.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoy our time today. Brian Hamilton, winemaker from Kin Vineyards. We wish you an incredible season, and hopefully we can get out there soon to enjoy your wine.
Looking forward to seeing you, and thanks for your time this morning.
My pleasure. Brian Hamilton, winemaker. Wouldn't that be a great title, winemaker? Radio host, winemaker. I think winemaker sounds way cooler. How about you, Dave Tripp?
Yeah, that would be near the top of the list for me, right there. Wine taster, maybe?
Right.
I don't know. That sounds okay, too.
When you, I don't know, do you drink wine?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I don't really drink that much, to be honest with you, but when I go into the local LCBO and try and find something, I find it hard to sort of choose something. How do you choose your wines?
I took a wine, food, and culture course in college, so I got a pretty good head start. But honestly, I asked the people that work there, pick me a vintage. They know what they're doing. They know their stuff.
You are just a wealth of information. Every day we work together here at City News, I'm learning something new about you.
I'm a bit of an onion for sure.
A bit of an onion. We have a really big show, of course, today. Sarah Eleanor Davis is going to join us from Cornerstone Housing for Women. There's a very serious emergency housing crisis happening there. She's going to share all the details. And of course, we turn the mic over to you in the 10 o'clock hour. We're going to have the talk back hour. We are going to talk about anything you want to talk about. There is obviously lots of topics we can speak about. There's schools reopening in terms of, they're not reopening, I should say. So schools are closed, of course. That was hope. Many parents were hoping those schools were going to open, but they're not. That in-person learning is just going to be remote until the end of the school year. Hopefully that sacrifice that many people are making is going to benefit us when it comes to September and, of course, over the summer. So that is certainly the hope there. Also, vaccines. If you have anything to say about vaccines, we're seeing some new information. Mixing vaccines, etc. Are you team AstraZeneca like myself? Are you team Pfizer? Are you team Moderna? Are you trying to book a second dose for someone? Has that been challenging for you? I've shared before through the week trying to book that second dose for my mom who lives in Ottawa, and hers ends up being in Winchester, Ontario. So that really isn't what we're looking for, right? Especially for our seniors, we want to make it nice and easy for them. Also, of course, all week long, we've been covering the horrific story of the 215 children found in a mass grave, their remains in Kamloops, BC. So we're definitely going to be following that story for you here. If you have any feedback about that, we certainly welcome it. And I love the idea. One of my friends, Al Roberts, reached out to me yesterday and said, Sam, one of the things I'm doing is I'm giving a gift to Wabano Centre, which of course is Indigenous-led, doing great work with Indigenous people. And he's saying that's the way that I'm going to channel the grief and the frustration over this discovery. And I thought that was a really meaningful way to show the Indigenous community how, as Canadians, we are embracing them during this time of grief. Other options there, of course, the Robert Smart Centre. They have about 60% of people that are using their services that are Indigenous. And that is a situation in that case where they're dealing with very, very severe mental health with youth. They work not only here in Ontario, but they work up north. And many Indigenous youth come to Ottawa to receive treatment here at the Robert Smart Centre. So, think about maybe an Indigenous-led organization that you can give to at this time as a way of showing them that you're thinking about them at this time. We know a little bit later in the show, we're going to have, of course, our Queen's Park panel. We're going to ask them all the tough questions as well. We're going to talk to them about schools and vaccines, and of course the call for search the property of Mohawk, the Mohawk Residential School. We have lots to talk about today, make no mistake about it. I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. Stay with us here on City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making. I knew this is a skill I had, so I made a chocolate that had a cultural-based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part. It's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great, because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner, being around town, and we decided to partner, because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together, and it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Piche, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been an amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning, I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. If you haven't heard the news yet, we do have some good news regarding that Amber Alert. Ottawa police are telling us that Abby Mathusi has been located by police safe and sound. The child is receiving some medical attention. One person is in custody. The investigation, of course, continues, and we will be receiving updates, and we'll pass them on to you as soon as we receive them here on City News. We want to shift gears a little bit and speak with Sarah Eleanor Davis. Hello.
Good morning.
Of course, you're the executive director at Cornerstone Housing for Women, and we received a really heartbreaking email from you yesterday, Sarah, regarding emergency housing for women at risk.
Yes, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me this morning. Really appreciate the opportunity to share with the community what's happening at Cornerstone.
It is really, really heartbreaking, especially during this time that we learned that there's 100 women that will lose their housing, and you're in desperate search of housing for them. Walk us through this, Sarah.
Absolutely. So Cornerstone Housing for Women provides emergency shelter and safe, affordable permanent housing for women here in Ottawa. We operate 4 supportive housing programs, an outreach program, as well as the Women's Emergency Shelter, which I'm here to talk about today, which most recently during the pandemic has become a physical distancing center. So we partnered with the City of Ottawa at the onset of the pandemic to move into a space at Ottawa U. They generously offered a residence that wasn't being used so that we were able to move our women as well as offer space for more women in respect to the physical distancing requirements. We quickly moved from offering service to 60 women to 125 women in a couple of months, and really proud to say that we were able to do so, especially during those colder months and during the pandemic. We had planned on being in the space until the end of July and then returning back to our home location at O'Connor. We'd been in our location for over 30 years, and during the time that we have been away from O'Connor, the city had the opportunity to receive funding to do some much needed capital work. And as you can imagine, a space that's used commercially for over 30 years needed a bit of work, so things like electrical, boilers, etc. And that work's not slated to be completed until the end of December at this point. The university is preparing for an onslaught of new students, a new cohort, as well as navigating the pandemic, to require their space back early. So that's left us now with 26 days as of today to find a new home for 125 women.
26 days, Sarah. That is frightening, especially to think to try and solve this normally can take years, right? In terms of trying to find housing for people, especially at risk. Sarah,
Absolutely.
What are the solutions and who needs to come to the table to solve this today?
So we are working tirelessly with our partners, the City of Ottawa and community partners, and looking at options and exploring what that means to us. As you can imagine, looking for an alternative space for 125 women with 125 different sets of needs, as well as our programs and services is no easy task. So we do have the immediate that we need a home, and we need that in 26 days. The reality is that we are here today to talk to the community, to prioritize women's homelessness. We need a space that provides support and space to the women that we're seeing today. And that's not the 3 or 4 women that we saw 30 years ago. That's 125 women every night. And we are full every single night. So we are looking for the support of the community to prioritize women's homelessness, to ensure that we have a purpose-built space for them.
In 26 days, it's going to be obviously a challenge. Are you looking for, and I'm just thinking, so this isn't, I don't know what your plans are, but are you thinking about like a hotel that can quickly transition? Are you looking for something different than that? Are you looking for an apartment building? Like what are you looking for?
We're really looking for any space that can accommodate 125 individuals in the office spaces that we need to do so. So we're not shying away from anything. We're trying to be creative and think outside of the box and how best to offer that support to the women. As I mentioned before, we are working with the city and have a few options on the table, but it's very difficult to make those decisions in such trying times and in such an immediate way to ensure that we're meeting the needs of every person that we serve.
Anyone that's ever worked in social service automatically thinks about those 3 levels of government, right? So you automatically think, of course, of your municipality, your province, and of course the feds.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had those discussions with those 3 layers of government?
We have. We've been reaching out to our comrades and our colleagues to let them know what's happening. I'm happy to say that Cornerstone is well supported in our community and at all levels of government, and we're hoping that those champions can take some of that work for us and to move those priorities forward.
Are you thinking, too, that someone here listening to City News today may have, an opportunity? Maybe they own something that would be able to accommodate those women. Maybe it's someone that owns a hotel or someone that owns a building that may be able to be changed that quickly. Is that the hope?
Absolutely. We are, again, calling on the community, whatever support you're able to provide. If you have a space, if you're able to provide monetary donations to support with this transition, if you're able to write a letter to a council person, we're really just here to ask for the community support and to rally around the vulnerable women of Ottawa and make them a priority.
And let's talk about the women, Sarah. We know that anybody that sort of finds themselves without a home, women at risk, every single one of them has a unique story. Absolutely. And I think it's a really important point. They're the daughters, they're the aunts, they're the mothers of others. And so I think that's an important piece to sort of sit here for a minute and think about, there by the grace of God go I. And it's not lost on me that this pandemic, of course, has caused a lot of challenges for a lot of people. Walk me through the story of someone, Sarah.
So, as you mentioned before, the women come to us in all different journeys, whether they have a breakdown of a partnership, if they've had job loss, if they're new to the country. Every woman's story is very unique, and I had the opportunity to share my story most recently, and I'm very happy I had that opportunity to do that during this pandemic. And the impacts of the women that we serve are at a point in time where they've come to Cornerstone for support. And the story I shared earlier today, or more of an anecdote I shared earlier today, that a number of women are the heads of their households, and they're working a number of jobs to ensure that they're able to provide for their families. And during this pandemic, many women have lost their jobs due to the inability to work at multiple locations. All too often, we've seen an increase of these women accessing our shelter services because they aren't able to continue to work in a way that they've done for years, or that is allowing them to pay for their own housing, whatever the case may be. So something as simple as a change in the environment around them has impacted them so greatly that they're now finding themselves without a home and coming to us for shelter.
It is so challenging, and I really feel for you. I can imagine you're having some sleepless nights.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's around the clock, again, working with our partners, our community partners, the City of Ottawa. And I do have to thank, if I can take a moment and really thank the staff team at Cornerstone Housing for Women. They are the unsung heroes of this pandemic. Before this crisis and after this crisis, they are the ones that continue to show up every day to support these women as they transition and on their journey into independent living, whatever that might look like for them. And it wouldn't be possible without the fabulous team at Cornerstone.
Mm-hmm. We'll definitely be following this story because this is just something, when you think about Ottawa and Canada, it just doesn't seem like it's real, right? So I think
it's possible, yeah,
absolutely. So Sarah Eleanor Davis, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you. Executive Director, of course, at Cornerstone Housing for Women, speaking about the plight of many women during this time, an emergency housing crisis. They're losing that housing in 26 days. I mean, we think about 26 days from now, that feels like a minute from now. For me, I certainly will say that I had the honor of working with people who are homeless, and each and every one of them do have their own story, and each one of those women has their own story. And I hope as a community we can rally together and find those women a place where they can have a fresh start, and certainly help our friend there, Sarah Eleanor Davis, Executive Director of Cornerstone Housing for Women. When we come back, we turn the mic over to you. It is Friday, so we're going to talk about anything you want to talk about. Plus, Rob Snow is away, so we can have a little fun. I'm Sam Laprade, filling in for Rob Snow, of course, here on Rogers TV and City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, June 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 18 degrees. Smiths Falls also 18. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. We had breaking news from the West End this morning after an Amber Alert was issued for a missing 11-month-old. Well, that Amber Alert has now ended. The toddler, abducted overnight, was found safe. Now, our Jason White has been following this story all morning. He joins us now with the latest.
The 11-month-old girl was found safe this morning, but is receiving medical attention. Her disappearance was especially concerning because she has a feeding tube and cannot be fed regular baby formula. Police have not yet said exactly where she was found. The missing girl was the subject of a province-wide Amber Alert issued early this morning, with information that changed frequently and was sometimes conflicting. But police now say that one person is in custody. That person has not been identified. The investigation continues. Jason White, City News.
City News time, 10:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Increasing heat and humidity for us today. We're headed for a heat wave. The high today, 28, will feel like 33. Chance of showers or thunderstorms for the afternoon and early evening. Clear out tonight, 16 for the low, and then hot, hazy, humid for the weekend. Highs in the 30s, approaching humidex near 40. For today, the high near 28.
And right now, 18 degrees in both Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. The unemployment rate in Ottawa jumped over a percentage point between April and May. StatsCan says Ottawa now has a 7.9% unemployment rate. Gatineau, much lower. It actually dropped a little bit last month, now to 6.2. Across the country, StatsCan says the economy lost 68,000 jobs in May as lockdowns to slow the spread of COVID-19 continued.
The unemployment rate was 8.2% in May, just slightly up from the 8.1% rate recorded in April because the number of unemployed people in Canada overall stayed relatively steady. What changed is that more people dropped out of the labor force last month, including workers who simply got discouraged and gave up looking for employment. Stats Canada says the unemployment rate would have been 10.7% in May had it included in its calculations those people who wanted to work but didn't search for a job. May's job losses put the country about 3% below pre-pandemic levels. Terry Pedro, The Canadian Press, Ottawa.
City News time at 10:02. Just getting the latest numbers of COVID cases in our province for the day today. 914 new cases. 52 of them are in Ottawa. There's one more in Renfrew County, 0 in Eastern Ontario. And in Leeds, Grenville-Lanark, they have adjusted their count to drop one case. So it's -1, the case count in Leeds, Grenville-Lanark. The province is also reporting 19 more people have died from COVID-19. Now, there were just over 32,200 tests done for these latest numbers, and the positivity rate is at 2.8%. More recipients of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine can book their second shots. That begins today. Plans to roll out the final doses for everyone ramps up now amid concern over a highly contagious variant.
If you had AstraZeneca as your first shot 12 weeks ago, you can now book your second shot for either AZ, Pfizer, or Moderna. It's your choice when it comes to mixing vaccines. But there's now talk about speeding up second shots for everyone.
We're looking at all options because we need to stay ahead of this variant so that we can then move into stage 1, get life back more to normal for people as quickly as we can.
The variant Health Minister Christine Elliott is talking about is the Delta variant, first identified in India, considered highly transmissible. It makes up about a quarter of cases in Ontario. As it stands, the province has accelerated second shots for those 80 and over. It drops to 70 and over next week across Ontario, and they're offering it now to that age group in York Region. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
I'm Sam Laprade filling in for the Rob Snow Show. Of course, this is the Talk Back Hour. We want to hear from you. Do you want to talk about schools? Do you want to talk about the fact those kids are not going back to school? Do you want to talk about vaccines? What is on your mind today? Of course, it is Friday, so we'll talk about just about anything. We know that it's obviously been a very, very busy news week, so there may be something else on your mind as well. So we definitely want to hear from you. Definitely give us a call, 613-750-1310. We know there has been lots of discussion, of course, over many, many years into the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We know that Justin Trudeau has been speaking about that this week. We're going to go to a clip from him now.
Some have used words like unbelievable or unreal to describe the news that hundreds of children were found buried at the former Kamloops residential school. But for survivors, families, and communities, I know that this tragedy is all too believable, that the pain is all too real.
We know the federal government is committing to funding and co-developing targeted initiatives to address the systematic barriers identified by the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and, of course, girls as well. The Prime Minister took part in a virtual ceremony to mark the release of that federal action plan. We're going to hear more from him now.
On that day, I made a promise that we would confront those truths and turn the inquiry's calls for justice into real, meaningful, Indigenous-led action.
And he's really talking about how the government is committed to this funding and, of course, co-developing those targeted programs.
Holistic approach to ending this national tragedy, and to implement it, we'll invest an additional $2.2 billion starting this year.
And we know many of the people involved in the National Family and Survivor Circle says the commitments made in the action plan must be backed up by concrete funding. Let's hear from Hilda Anderson Prize now.
Every action outlined will only be effective with the proper financial supports of Indigenous-led initiatives that eliminates gaps and neglect. Profound and sustained political and institutional will must be demonstrated through concrete commitments and immediate action.
And this is something, of course, that's been on the minds of Canadians in the last week as well, in terms of Indigenous people. We know that, of course, the remains of 215 children were found in an unmarked grave at a residential school in Kamloops, BC. This inquiry as well into the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls is on the minds of many Canadians. Is it on your mind today? Many people have taken this time to look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report and see what's in that report. Each and every Canadian should have an opportunity to read that report and really understand, what has been faced by the Indigenous community at this time. So we're going to be following, obviously, this story here on City News and following any developments. A little bit later during our Queen's Park talk, we're going to talk about the fact that there are calls for many people, from many people, to search the Mohawk residential school as well. We know that there are a number of people indicating that children that went to that school all of a sudden were just never seen again. So this is very, very tragic. We know there's 130 residential schools that were in this country, and many people are calling on each and every one of them to be searched during this time. So this is a story that we will be following, and more importantly, this is important to all Canadians, but particularly the Indigenous community, that they are able to have some answers to a lot of questions that they have around this time. So we'll definitely be following that. As well, we know that, different provinces are opening up in different ways. We know the province of Quebec. You may be calling from Quebec today. You're certainly welcome to give us a shout here at City News, 613-750-1310. We know that the province is doing better than Ontario in many ways. So let's hear from Christian Dubé.
We want to go back to school. We want to remove those masks. We want to do all those good things. So that's what the second dose is that return to, I would say, quasi-normality.
And we know Quebec is shortening the interval between those doses of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines to 8 weeks from 16 weeks. And of course, Health Minister Christian Dubé, who we just heard from, says people in the province will be able to reschedule their second dose appointments as starting on June 7th, which of course is Monday, and that the province aims to give everyone 12 and over 2 doses of vaccine by the end of August. We would love that, of course, here in Ontario as well. There's been talks of that as well. So we will be, of course, following that. Give us a call here at City News, 613-750-1310. This is a story that, of course, COVID-19 has taken all of our minds in the last 15 or 16 months. We know as well in Quebec that 75% of adults in the province have now received at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccine. Let's hear from Minister Dubé again.
The job that has been done by the network, by the employees, by the pharmacists, by the businesses, all the people that have been working weekends for vaccination. We tend to forget that we vaccinate between 8 o'clock and sometimes 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, weekends. And we have vaccinated more than 5 million doses in the last 4 months. So this is huge. So we're happy with that.
We'll certainly be following the story out of Quebec in terms of how they're reopening. Ontario is hopefully just a couple of weeks behind them. We're looking to hear from the province of Ontario whether we're going to be opening up earlier. We haven't had any confirmation of that. There's certainly been rumors to that effect, but we know we're watching very closely Premier Doug Ford and, of course, his cabinet to make those decisions. Let's head to the province of Alberta right now. Have you heard this story of Alberta Premier Jason Kenney having some, drinks on a rooftop?
With respect to the rules, Mr. Speaker, we made every reasonable effort to be physically distanced outdoors rather than doing an indoor meeting, fully compliant with the rules.
I don't know if you saw this story. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is defending a whiskey drinks dinner with his inner circle this week on the rooftop patio of the infamous Sky Palace near the legislature. A photo of the event was leaked to the media, and I certainly saw the photo while I was checking up on some news, and it shows a group appearing to violate the COVID-19 mask and distancing rules, and Kenney's insisting that they did nothing wrong. We wanted to go and hear from Sarah Hoffman.
The Premier seems to think his best summer ever gets to start way before everybody else's on the roof of the Sky Palace with bottles of booze and absolutely no rules being followed.
So NDP Deputy Leader Sarah Hoffman indicating that photo clearly shows the group violating COVID-19 mask and distancing rules. She sounds pretty upset there that she's not having her summer start very soon and not starting certainly with any whiskey drinks. We will go to Hoffman again.
It's the first time I've heard of, Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member that Jameson's is, it's a nice Irish whiskey, but it's not the finest. It's a budget liquor, Mr. Speaker.
My apologies, of course, that is Alberta Premier Jason Kenney speaking about the kind of whiskey he drinks. Dave Tripp, what's your take on the Premier's comments?
I think it's just so out of touch, I guess. I don't know. The picture shocked me, and then the clips were even more shocking to me. I love how he's arguing that Jameson's a budget whiskey and that, listen, we didn't do anything wrong. We weren't drinking the good stuff.
And I think that's been really a theme throughout, whether it was, Premier Doug Ford going to his cottage and, we've seen others travel. We know there was a lot of that happening, of course, around Christmas time, a lot of political leaders traveling around that time. And now to see this from Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. And I think, he's obviously being a bit tongue-in-cheek there, but it really does it's hard for Canadians that have done everything we can, and we're not seeing our families. Dave, you and I aren't having whiskey on any rooftop anytime soon. So I think that's a really hard part for Canadians to hear.
And given the reactions for the March break trips and Christmas holidays and everything else, I think to handle it so not seriously is just a bad look. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's certainly piling on Jason Kenney right now, and I think I'd be just as critical of any party that made this mistake, but it's not going well for him right now.
It is not going well for him, but it's certainly going well for us here at City News. We want to hear from you, 613-750-1310. We are opening those phone lines up, and we definitely want to hear from you. Give us a call. Stay with us here on City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, record center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad saying, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats that every day, Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hintonburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I'm going, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store's about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed. And essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. You'll come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
I'm Sam Laprade, filling in for Rob Snow. Of course, this is the time every single week we get to chat with you between 10 and 11 here on City News. We turn the show over to you. Any topic, especially on Fridays, we'll talk about anything you want to talk about. There may be something going on that you want to talk about we may not be aware of yet, so definitely give us a call. Your opinion here matters very much on City News. We want to hear from you. We have Steve that wants to talk a little Jason Kenney.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you, Steve?
Not bad. Jason Kenney should just step down. He's a complete idiot. He wants to break up our country 6 months ago, 8 months ago. He doesn't follow the rules properly. He doesn't want to take down no monuments about children that were murdered in this country. Now, the worst thing about this all is that they have the RCMP that are going to be investigating murdered children in Canada, right?
Mm-hmm. My understanding is they're actually calling for those inquiries to be Indigenous-led. Now, whether that happens or not, but
the RCMP are one of the ones that went into people's homes and took out their children.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want them to investigate when they were the ones? Part of them, they went in there and took children out of their homes.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I actually don't want to see them do it. I actually do want to see this Indigenous-led. I think this is a really important part of this, is that it is Indigenous-led. There are brilliant Indigenous leaders that can come forward and lead this. So I believe strongly that it should be Indigenous-led.
And you know what else I've heard? I've heard the residential school in Brantford, Ontario, it was on another newscast saying they had a residential school that was called the House of Horrors.
Mm-hmm. We've heard that as well, Steve. It is
so
really...
you know what? I think the Conservatives and the Liberals should hang up their flag, and we should get new parties into this country and do it with a clean slate and get rid of the murderers.
Mm-hmm. It is really difficult, and especially looking to leaders right now that weren't serving at that time, but yet we want some accountability, don't we, Steve?
They still have the emblem, the Conservatives and the Liberals, right? Mm-hmm. And Justin Trudeau was part of the residential schools. Any prime minister up to 1996 was involved in killing children.
Steve, I really appreciate your call today. This is certainly my pleasure chatting with you today, Steve. It certainly is an emotional, and it should be an emotional issue for Canadians. It certainly is emotional, grief-stricken Indigenous community leaders. We've heard from them all week. We'd love to hear you now. We'd love to hear from you. Is this what's on your mind? Have you maybe opened up that Truth and Reconciliation report for the very first time this week? I would love to hear from you if you took this opportunity to really open up that report, learn what those findings were. That would be something that I would love to chat about today. I've said all week long while I've been filling in for Rob Snow that I would love to speak to somebody that is graduating from grade 12. I would love to hear from somebody and get that perspective of what it's like to have gone through grade 11 during this COVID-19 time, and to now go through grade 12, not have that opportunity to reconnect with your friends and your teachers as you head off on your next chapter. If someone in your household is willing to talk about that, if they're graduating from grade 12, I would definitely love to have that conversation as well. We're going to go to another caller now, and I'm happy to hear from Anne. Hi, Anne.
Oh, hi, Sam. I feel bad for you having to deal with Rob's cranky callers.
Oh, that's
anyway,
no problem at all.
A great job. Okay, I heard both this morning because, this really concerns me, this vaccine thing. On CBC and CTV, 2 articles lauding that Canada has the highest rate for people getting their first vaccine. But we've only got 4% of our population that has had 2 doses, and you're not vaccinated fully until you get the second dose. And
exactly.
I mean, what are we doing now? We're only doing 80-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
It just bugs me because I find there's this slant that wants to protect Trudeau so much, because I know if it was Stephen Harper, they wouldn't be spinning it that way. They'd be saying, oh, well, you shouldn't be so braggy that you're the highest in the first vaccine because you're only 4% in the second one. But so that really bothers me, that kind of bias, slant to a news article that is quite important because, there are people that are not news junkies like me.
Right.
A lot of people, they're lazy. They just get their little slip of news at night or whatever online or something that they don't really dig. And then, that looked like, oh, Trudeau's doing a great job, which bugs me because he's not.
And it is so frustrating, I think, when we think about going into the summer and I think, when I think about what summer is going to look like for so many people, if we don't get those all done, then it really will affect our fall as well. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. This is, the trickle-down effect. It just takes us longer and longer into this pandemic. And quite honestly, to be really blunt about it, it's lives lost, more lives lost, Anne.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the poor children, everybody's been talking that they can't go back to school. I feel badly for parents of young kids. I mean, my daughter is 30 now, so I'm not dealing with that anymore. But I feel so badly for these kids. They've lost a year, and at that age, they need the social development that they get from being around people at school, like their teacher, their friends.
For sure.
it's just a really sad time for them.
It is.
We're older. We've learned coping mechanisms, but they haven't. And I'm hearing a lot of stories about children, like suicides. I heard about one suicide. This is from a person who thought their child was totally happy, and they were 15. But that's a really hard age to be going through stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, and I have a 13-year-old daughter. You might have heard me speak about her before. And, there are times where she'll say to me, like, Mom, I'm the only one with my camera on, or there's only 2 or 3 that'll put our cameras on for the teacher.
Wow.
So it is really, really challenging. I'll say again and again, I cannot imagine being a teacher. I have the utmost respect for teachers, and we certainly, want to see a resolution of this quickly. And I always value your time. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, Sam. Bye.
We wanted to speak with Douglas. Hi, Douglas.
Good morning, Samantha.
Good morning.
I was wondering, why is there I made an informed decision, according to me, that I want the Johnson & Johnson shot. Where is this?
That is such an interesting question because, the last time, to be honest with you, Douglas, I heard about Johnson & Johnson, and I'm like, Anne, I'm a bit of a news junkie, obviously, too. But the last time I heard about it is that there was some issues regarding, the state of the building that those vaccines were created in. There was some that didn't pass the quality test. But you're right, Douglas, I haven't heard about Johnson & Johnson in a couple of weeks now.
And it seems like when your prime minister overpaid for these things, like he paid double what he should have paid, they seem to be directing people to that and away from Johnson & Johnson. And I'm telling you, I would not ever take anything the Trudeau government is directing me towards.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you're going to take a vaccine, though?
As soon as Johnson & Johnson becomes available, I will get it.
Interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. I to be honest with you, this is the first conversation I've had with anybody regarding Johnson & Johnson. So I really appreciate that. Thanks so much for calling.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Douglas in Vanier giving us a call. Now we wanted to speak with Nick. Hi, Nick.
It's Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. I'm going to tell you, Rick, I'm blind as a bat and I can't see a thing. So thank heavens Dave Tripp keeps me informed. How are you, Rick?
Very good. Yourself?
Good. I understand you're calling about grade 8 math.
Basically, I'm a former school administrator, teacher. I've done all of it. For math, for anybody listening, there's, if you Google Khan Academy, Khan Academy, it's a site that will teach a child or an individual all the steps. It has been funded by Bill Gates. It's free, and it's amazing. And also for parents listening, you shouldn't be worried. If you're really interested in your child's education, you should read the provincial curriculum of your child's grade. And then you look at the overall expectations. Those are the things that they have to grasp during that grade. All the other specific expectations, it's gravy on top. So I would not get too excited by students staying at home and being homeschooled.
We have to go to a break, Rick, but I really appreciate your feedback, and thanks for the tip about grade 8 math. You probably have heard me say that I don't do grade 8 math very well, so we're going to come back here on the Talkback Hour. Appreciate Rick's feedback today here on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, June 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees, in Smiths Falls, 18, and here's what's making news this hour. The Amber Alert for a missing 11-month-old girl in Ottawa ended this morning. That girl was found safe, but was taken for a medical exam. Now, she is fed through a tube and can't eat regular baby formula, so as a precaution, she was taken for a medical exam. Now, police in Ottawa say they do have one person in custody. No other information has been released right now, but there is a media briefing that will go on at some point this morning. Latest case count for new COVID infections in Ontario creeping back up a bit today. There are 914 new cases. Now, 52 of them are in Ottawa, one is in Renfrew. An adjustment means there is one less case counted in Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit and no new cases today in Eastern Ontario. Results come from just over 32,200 tests done. The positivity rate from those tests is at 2.8%. Health Minister Christine Elliott says the vaccine task force in the province is considering allowing people to book second COVID-19 vaccine shots sooner, just to stay ahead of the variant that is gaining ground in the province. Health officials reiterated concern about the growing prevalence of the Delta variant. That was the one that began in India, now called Delta, makes up nearly 1/4 of the COVID-19 cases now in Ontario. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Well, it's Friday, and you know what that means. We'll talk about anything here on the Rob Snow Show. I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob this week. We have had some incredible callers this week, some really great information, different perspectives, and really appreciate you calling in. Certainly give us a call. We have another half an hour to chat with you, so don't wait in case those phone lines get all jammed up, but we want you to hear from you now. 613-750-1310. We are going to go to the beautiful town of Lanark. Hi, Steve.
Sam, how are you? How's business?
Have you missed me, Steve?
Very much so. And I had a dream about you, too, that you won a Lotto Max, right?
Oh, wow. That would be fantastic.
And then you were able to go to the Shoppers Drug Mart and pick up that thing for your hair. do your own hair and have your hair done.
Right. For those listeners that may not know, I'm desperate to get my hair done because I've got about 6 inches of roots. And
That's
Steve's trying to send me
this morning on the show there. You got about 6 inches of roots.
Right. And Steve's trying to send me to Shoppers Drug Mart to do my own hair. But thank you so much.
Why to keep bottling there, and it'll like you turn out good.
Steve, you wanted to chat about vaccines. I know we've chatted this week about the frustration about vaccines.
I'm sorry, did you have a chance to try to get through with your higher-ups there to Queen's Park? Because I got the number, and I'll give it to you, to talk to Randy Hilliard's office or Scott Reed up there and try to find out if it's going to be mandatory to get this thing done.
Well, you know what? You're not going to believe this, but I thought about you this morning, and we have I did, because we have the Queen's Park hour, half an hour, I should say, coming up. The Queen's Park team that comes and chats with us every week, and this is something I'm going to ask them. So from 11:30 to 12 today, we will speak with a number of representatives from Queen's Park, including, of course, John Fraser. We're going to speak with David Piccini, and of course, Gilles Bisson.
Well,
so
our local area, I got the villa, and they're going after Randy Hilliard, which is ridiculous, and I think they should be checked up on that deal. It's 416-325-2244 is right to Queen's Park, his office in Queen's Park, and then you got the Carlton Place number at 613-267. No, I'm sorry, the first number. 613-267-8239.
Yeah, thanks so much for providing those. I think, people will reach out to their representatives, and I certainly if they're wanting those numbers, of course they can reach out. Steve,
I'm just wondering if they're going to make it mandatory that, say, Billy Bob down the street or Susie Jew, you have to get the thing, you're going to have to get it. Mm-hmm. To go get a loaf of bread at Circle K type thing. If they're going to go that far.
That's a great question.
I haven't got it yet. I mean, it's been out there for 15 months, right? I'm healthy as ever, and I'm getting up there too a little bit, and I don't want to get it. I just got not interested in going, lining up and getting one shot and then waiting for the second one. I'm just not interested in doing it. But do you think you're going to make it mandatory that everybody's going to have to get it? I know it's bad, but is it that bad?
It's a personal preference, right? I don't think from what I've heard, there isn't a mandatory you must receive it.
Yeah.
Because there are people that have medical reasons for not being able to take the vaccine. So that's something to think about as well. So it won't be.
There's a certain group of people that
right.
can't get it.
It is a personal preference, of course, but yeah, always appreciate your time. And Lanark is deep in my heart.
For the show this morning with Robin Harper, we had a pretty good time here this morning for a Friday, and he came up with some pretty wild questions here and stuff. If you get a chance, listen to the podcast, okay?
I'll definitely do that. We love Robin Harper, of course, our sister station.
We had fun this morning, so it was a pretty good show.
Thanks so much, Steve, for calling from Lanark. We appreciate it very much. And we have Ron calling from the beautiful part of the city, Barrhaven.
Yeah, good morning.
Hi, Ron. How are you? What's on your mind?
My folks came back from Florida a little over 2 weeks ago. I saw them yesterday, and they just finished their quarantine. And it was interesting, these four dads that Trudeau's letting all these people across the border. If people had any idea what you have to go through, besides the quarantine hotels, they had to have a plan. They got to the border. They went to a tent. They were tested. They waited 15 minutes. I guess it's some kind of rapid test. Transferred their luggage. They went to their home, and they got a phone call every single day, and they came to the house 5 times in 2 weeks to make sure that they were there.
Oh, that's so interesting. So your parents were driving back from Florida then?
Well, they flew to a small airport in upstate New York. I forget what the name of it was.
Ogdensburg, maybe? Or?
It might have been. And then they had a car service take them to the border, and another car service pick them up on the other side.
So interesting.
I don't know what Ford's talking about here.
And I saw a report maybe about a month ago of people that were sort of doing the same thing and then walking across the bridge, of course, that famous bridge in Niagara Falls, and sort of, getting around the rules that way. So it's really interesting to hear about your parents. Were they vaccinated in Florida, Ron?
Oh, yeah. They got their shots at 21 and 28, 21 days apart. So I'm not sure which one that one is. But really they got it on schedule as you're supposed to have it. They had their CDC card that they had both shots, and they still had to go through all this. So I think that what's being done is more than enough.
So are you thinking that people are sort of crying wolf over that, or are you think...
I don't know, Sam. I know I've seen video of people arriving at the airport and flipping them off and saying, make the fine 10,000. I don't care. And no follow-up, no plan, no nothing. I think it's overkill, this putting people in hotels. I think it's crazy. You have to trust Canadian citizens. Look, you want to do this to foreigners, I don't care. But Canadian citizens, no, you have to take their word for it.
Really interesting perspective there. I haven't actually spoke with anybody that's come back and gone through that process, and certainly been called every day and visited 5 times. I think that's something that really surprises me. It probably surprises a lot of our listeners today too, Ron.
Well, they're in Montreal. I don't know if we're doing that here in Ontario.
Quebec. Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're in Bay-D'Arc. I had to work in Montreal yesterday. So
interesting.
I was in Toronto 3 days ago.
Wow. How is it? So I'll ask you, because I think the farthest I've driven is Kemptville during the last 15 months. How is it driving around the province? That'd be a long walk, Ron. But how is it?
Oh, it's I'll tell you what, there's very little traffic compared. Like I said, Montreal yesterday, it took me 18 minutes to move 1.8 kilometers in the city.
Interesting.
It's not good. But in Toronto, the basketball courts were full and the parks were full of people. And I don't know what to say about that, but it was all young people. And I think we can all agree that young people are pretty much immune to this thing. And your expert guests have also said that the Delta variant, or whatever you want to call it, really doesn't affect younger people the way it does people in their 70s and 80s.
it's just that, it's just when they're connecting with their grandparents or with their parents. That's the problem, right? Yeah.
You would hope that they'd have more sense than to do that. I didn't see my parents for months when this first started, and then after that, my kids didn't get to go see them either. I mean, it's common sense.
Absolutely. Steve, always appreciate you calling in from Barrhaven. Thank you so much for that perspective today. We want to hear from you. There are lots of stories we're following, of course. We've talked about vaccines in the last few minutes, of course. We've talked about border traveling, and of course, always wanting to speak to you about, the reopening of Ontario. Are you living in Quebec, and are you sort of looking at Ontario going, we're open? Are you going to catch up to us, Ontario? I know, of course, the Premier Pierre Legault was sort of sharing that he was on a patio the other day and how excited he was to be able to do that and what that meant for that province. We're certainly looking for our Premier to make that call. And are we suspecting maybe he'll be on a patio, Dave Tripp?
I don't think he will before anyone else. I think that Premier Ford recognizes that people are keeping a pretty close eye on him right now.
For sure.
Especially after learning from Mr. Kenny's
Yes, I think the lesson of Alberta Premier Jason Kenney being on a rooftop, enjoying some whiskey with some of his colleagues is a lesson that a lot of other politicians are looking at right now and thinking, I should probably stay a little bit closer to home and not be in the public eye that way. But I'm certainly looking for the news from the province, just like each and every one of you are, about when we will reopen. What does that look like? What does it look like for the businesses, those small businesses? I think about my own stylist and what the impact to his business has been. I think about barbers. I think about estheticians. I think about people like that have really been impacted at this time. We know that they want to get back to work. There is no two ways about it. And we know Ontarians have an appetite to use their services. So we're certainly looking for that. We're going to go to Ashton and speak with Rhonda. Hi.
Hi. I'm phoning about something totally off topic.
Okay, let's do it.
I've been out driving areas through Renfrew County, Lanark County, and I've been noticing a lot of turtles on the road. Even where there's no signs identifying a turtle area. In one day, I saved 3 turtles. So I just want people to be careful when they're out driving to watch for them.
It's a great reminder, Rhonda. I actually saw a number of my friends on Facebook were posting their turtle saving stories as well. So, of course, they're laying their eggs and there's some babies and all those good things. So we want to make sure we're looking out for our turtle friends. So thank you so much for that, Rhonda, and enjoy that beautiful town of Ashton.
Thank you. Take care.
We're going to go back to Barrhaven. Hello, Carol. Hi, Carol. You wanted to talk about vaccines.
Yes. I'm so confused. My understanding was that as of June 4th, if you got your first shot at a drugstore, you could book your second shot. Well, I got my first shot of AstraZeneca at Shoppers Drug Mart. And first I checked my app, and it says I'm not eligible. Then I called the store, and they said they are not giving second dose of AstraZeneca. And then I decided I'd go into the store, and the lady that was there to answer questions said, at 10 weeks, I can book my appointment for my 12-week second shot. And if they have supply of AstraZeneca, they will be giving it. But right now, they don't have the supply.
I feel for you, Carol. I feel the same way. This whole process has been very, very confusing. I believe, when we think about this, we were hoping it would be so much simpler. But the reality is, either you're going to get another AstraZeneca or are you going to mix? Have you decided to get the other AstraZeneca, if that's what's offered?
I would prefer that. My son, who does a lot more research on this sort of thing, says take the first one. Mind you, he said that about the AstraZeneca too. So I guess I'll get what I can get.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely frustrating, and we've heard lots of different examples of that throughout the week, where communications and of course that's supply. I mean, when you have the three levels of government involved in anything, it is challenging to have a cohesive communications plan. But it has been particularly concerning for Canadians over the last couple of weeks in terms of how we're going to roll out these vaccines, especially that second dose.
And it's frustrating because we've been through this once.
Mm-hmm.
Have they not learned anything, or worked out the process any better? It doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it works out for you, Carol. I hope it works out for all Ontarians and of course all Canadians. Thanks so much for calling from Barrhaven.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, but don't let that stop you from dialing 613-750-1310. We're going to take your calls. Clearly, we'll talk about anything vaccines, turtles, schools, Jason Kenney. It's all on the table. Stay with us here on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service, we're big on that. The cashiers, the deli, you're not, if you ask for something, they're not going to point, it's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there, okay? If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers. And we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, can you try getting me this? Can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, from like all over the world. And we source it through, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to buy, Cuddy turkey breast, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands, the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Okay, what do you want to talk about today? We have one more opportunity for you to give us a call here at City News, 613-750-1310. We're going to head to Gloucester and speak with Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Sam. How are you?
Good. How are you? You're calling about vaccines.
I am. Just a quick thing, Sam. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I keep hearing on the news how everybody's so happy that, Canada, we're ahead of the game. We're ahead of a lot of countries in vaccination. What I don't get, though, is why people are so happy when we're 34 million people in our country, give or take. We should be done by now. You look at the States where they're over, 250 million people. I just don't understand how that's something to be so happy about.
I have to be honest with you. I agree with you. I think we should have been done by now, and it's obviously a procurement issue in terms of the federal government and not having that company being right here in Canada creating those vaccines is another big piece of it. There's been lots of different issues, but I am absolutely with you. There's no reason why, let's just say by July 1st, that all Canadians couldn't have had first and second dose. Now I say that.
We're the size of one city of the United States. People are applauding the government of Canada and Trudeau when we should be done these vaccines 5 times over.
Now I say that, Dan, and I really want to make sure that people that are doing this hard work understand that I'm certainly not meaning they haven't worked hard. The health officials, the Ottawa Public Health and all, they can only do what they can do with the supply that they are given. So I think that's a really important piece.
And I know that's the issue. I guess my point was just the fact that I don't understand why people, if anything, people should be pushing the government to, try to speed it up as opposed to, praising them for doing such a good job. Obviously everybody's working hard with what they got, but the government, there's no reason why a country like Canada shouldn't have their hands on so many more vaccines quicker.
Do you have your first shot?
I do not. I'm going actually on Tuesday.
So you have June 8th is your day then. And have they told you yet when your second date will be?
They have not yet. I don't believe anyways. I know my wife was doing it, but we're going to be going with the Moderna. So we were choosing between that and Pfizer, and that's the one we're going to pick.
And you're feeling comfortable with that decision, Dan?
I am for the good part. I do have asthma and a lot of allergies, so I'm kind of a little bit worrisome, but it is what it is, right? It needs to be done. At the end of the day, if we want life to go on, we do travel a lot, we do a lot of outdoor stuff, so I know it's going to be a big restriction if we don't. So
thanks, Dan. I really appreciate your thoughts today. Dan from Gloucester sharing on the frustration about vaccines. I don't think there's a Canadian that hasn't been frustrated in terms of the way that this is rolled out, especially when we do see other countries way ahead of us. It's been frustrating. Dave, I know you and I have had endless conversations about how frustrating this has been.
Absolutely.
And I think when we, think about seniors, especially, trying to get that second dose, and it is hard enough for seniors to connect on their computers if they have one even, and finding loved ones to try and do that work for them to try and track down those second doses. So, I'm hoping that when all is said and done, that we look through everything that's been done through this pandemic with a real a keen eye, if this was ever to happen again, God forbid, that we've learned some lessons. Do you feel the same way, Dave?
Yeah, and I'm sure that they are learning lessons as we go. I think that's something that's been happening since the very beginning of this pandemic, but for some people, it's not enough. There are a lot of people that are waiting on that second dose and that are really worried about their health, really worried about their loved ones. So I can definitely understand why people are upset or looking for answers.
Mm-hmm. What's the first thing you're going to do when Ontario opens again?
A get together with family definitely sounds like the top of my list. Mm-hmm. I've got some family with some pretty nice cottages I'd like to visit that I didn't get to see last year. So hopefully get there and maybe a barbecue, something along those lines. And hugs. I miss hugs.
Hugs, I know.
How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Family obviously is number one for me, and then it really is trying to give some normalcy to my daughter. I think that's going to be a big part of it. She's 13, and at 13, kids should be having sleepovers and going to soccer tournaments and hanging out with their friends and all those good things. So I'm hoping that when we return to normal, that we can go to movies again and do all those great things. So we're looking for that. We have a couple more minutes. If you want to get your thoughts in today, we're happy to take your call, 613-750-1310. A little bit later in the show, we're going to be speaking with veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster Steve Warne. We look forward to his chat. We're going to chat with him about lots of different topics today related to sports. We're going to talk, of course, about the NHL playoffs, and we're going to also speak to him about the CFL season and Edmonton renaming, of course, that CFL team, Dave, naming them the Edmonton Elks.
Yeah, which I think is fantastic.
It's a great name. I think it's been long overdue. Of course, that team was called the Edmonton Eskimos for years. That name is no longer appropriate. Of course, was never probably appropriate, to be honest. And Edmonton Elks is the new name.
And hopefully it leads to some news on the rest of the CFL season and a return of the Red Blacks.
I can't wait. I don't know about you, but that's one thing. Let's absolutely hopefully plan to be at a CFL game as a way of getting back to normal. We're waiting to hear from the CFL, of course, what that means for that league. That league was definitely missed last year. I know I certainly missed going to those Red Black games, and I'm sure many of our listeners as well miss CFL football. Let's go to Dave in Ottawa. Hi, Dave. Hi, Dave.
How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, not too bad.
Good.
Too bad.
You were calling about the Amber Alert.
Yeah. So I've got an 11-month-old at home as well, and I got the Amber Alert in the middle of the night. You know, my partner and I were both concerned and woke up this morning, clicked on the link, and the issue that I had was all of the information was outdated. So it was like a 4-hour-old alert, like they were looking for, I guess, a 70-year-old woman. And then we woke up this morning and we were trying to find out the status of it, and the most recent information was a 70-year-old woman. And if you click the link that they text to you, it just brings you to that initial Amber Alert with outdated information. So we had to scour, Google, see what we could find on Twitter. Nothing was really updated until the news came out and did a press release or whatever, and they said, the child was found nice and safe, but different news agencies weren't updated at the same time. So I guess that was my frustration with it.
Absolutely, and of course there's lots of frustrations about Amber Alert, and all I could say about that is I can't imagine sort of trying to manage that information, especially in the middle of the night, and trying to keep everyone up to date. That would be very, very difficult, but your comments are very well taken, that it would be very frustrating, and I think especially, Dave, if you have a little one at home that's that same age, it's really relatable for you.
Yeah, I was just I was thinking, I don't know why they can't just have the link that they text you, go to a website that has updated information. So, that's really the way that everybody tries to get the information is go to that link. And if all the information is outdated, then you rely on the news and Twitter, right? And even Twitter was outdated. So
I really, really appreciate that comment today, and thank you so much. Hopefully, there's no more Amber Alerts in the future. Of course, that's a dream of mine. We know that Abby was found nice and safe this morning, so that's really important.
That's the main thing. Yeah, I was relieved, and so was my partner. So anyway, you have a nice day.
Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate your call. Thanks so much for calling City News. We're going to be back with Steve Warne. Stay with us here on City News.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, June 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees, in Smiths Falls, 18. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. An Amber Alert ended for a toddler who was abducted overnight in Ottawa. The little girl found safe, but there was confusing information this morning about this 11-month-old. Our Jason White following the story. He's here to set the record straight.
Police aren't releasing a lot yet, but say the baby girl was found safe, not far from where she went missing, near Carling and Pinecrest overnight. The baby is currently being examined by doctors, but they are not worried about her condition. Ottawa Police Constable Martin Dompierre says the information around this morning's Amber Alert changed through this morning as investigators dug deeper.
And the investigator pursuing the investigation found out that some information was irrelevant, some information was founded, so that's why a second release was issued early this morning with more precise information.
Police are currently interviewing one suspect who is not the mother, but the suspect's name has not been released. Police do confirm that the suspect is the person of interest who was seen in that photo released by police this morning. At police headquarters, Jason White, City News.
City News time, 11:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Increasing heat and humidity for us today. We're headed for a heat wave. The high today, 28, will feel like 33. Chance of showers or thunderstorms for the afternoon and early evening. Clear out tonight, 16 for the low, and then hot, hazy, humid for the weekend. Highs in the 30s, approaching humidex near 40. For today, the high near 28.
And right now, 19 degrees in Ottawa, 18 degrees in Smiths Falls. The latest case count for new COVID infections in Ontario creeping back up a bit today. 914 new cases. Now, 52 of those cases are in Ottawa. There's one more in Renfrew. An adjustment means there's one less case counted in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and no new cases reported in Eastern Ontario by the province. Results come from just over 32,200 tests that were completed, the positivity rate at 2.8%. Conservative Party in Canada calling for more criteria from the federal government for lifting some COVID restrictions. It comes as the Prime Minister is preparing to update the nation on COVID efforts and vaccine delivery. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
When the Prime Minister speaks, I'm told he'll be providing an update on vaccines along with the Federal Procurement Minister and Brigadier General Krista Brody, who is in charge of vaccine distribution. We're still waiting on a final delivery schedule from Moderna for the end of the month, with the drug maker shy more than 6 million doses from its target. They're also increasing calls for Canada to start donating shots to other countries now that we're tops in the G7 for first doses and making great progress in our vaccination campaign. Meanwhile, Conservative health critic Michelle Rempel-Garner demanding benchmarks from the government on when the federal restrictions will be lifted. She says the hotel quarantine system needs to end now.
Experts from the government's own COVID-19 testing and screening expert advisory panel have said that the current system of managing the border is unfair, inconsistent, and not based on science.
The Conservatives also demanding an improved system for detecting variants. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Stats Canada says the country lost 68,000 jobs in May. That marks a second straight month of declines after April's drop of 207,000 jobs. Now, the unemployment rate in Ottawa actually jumped from 6.7% in April to 7.9% in May. In Gatineau, the rate actually went down slightly from 6.6% down to 6.2%. Nationally, the unemployment rate right now is at 8.2%. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 1011 FM
and 1310 AM.
This is a very important week in our city because, of course, it's all leading up to the CHEO Telethon taking place on Sunday, June the 6th. And when I think about the CHEO Telethon, of course, I think about amazing families. We're going to speak with Jodie and Amina Golden. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello. I understand Amina's with us as well.
She is.
Jodie, I can't even imagine. You've got a beautiful 11-year-old daughter. I saw her picture, and she certainly looks like she's full of life and has great possibilities in front of her. Take me back to your pregnancy and how CHEO became such a big part of your life.
Well, thank you for having us. And about 10, 11 years ago, I was experiencing some health risks with my pregnancy. And so Amina was delivered by emergency C-section, and she was under 5 pounds. And she was small and strong, but around 6 months of age, she started developing respiratory illnesses and infections, which brought us to CHEO at the emergency department and some prolonged stays at CHEO. And after some testing and treatments and surgery, she was diagnosed with a chronic respiratory disease. And so we've been a part of CHEO for the last decade with treatment and plans at home, and we're in a much better place than we are now. But certainly there was a very stressful, sick time there for us.
And I've heard this from other families, and you can tell me your own experience, but I've heard from other families that, of course, CHEO is all about treating the child, especially someone in Amina's case where she required lots of medical care. But CHEO is also about the whole family, and I understand they've been very good to you as well, walking you through how to be a mom to someone that is struggling with health challenges.
Yes, that's for sure. In addition to the great care that Amina received, and I have to say in a very child-safe, friendly manner, medical staff took time to send me on courses and training that would help me learn how to manage the disease at home, how to administer medication, and try to normalize, what life would look like for us. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I have to say, I met with professional staff, but there were volunteers who sometimes came and relieved me for a few minutes and let me have a mummy break. And they've been just such a resource to me as a parent.
It's so great to hear, because I think when we think about CHEO and we think about all the great things they've done in the community, I think people that haven't had children and then do and end up at CHEO have a completely different respect for what happens inside that building, because I think, yes, of course, it's bricks and mortar, but it's really what happens inside that building to change the lives of many children in our community.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And, like I sort of mentioned, in addition to the great medical team, there's board of directors and there's volunteers and there's a lot of different teams that pull together what happens at CHEO, from a toy lending library to Molly the Clown, who makes every kid's stay at CHEO that much more special. And, from the emergency department to specialized care, it's just a state-of-the-art special facility, and we're very lucky to have that in our community.
Amina, you and I have a friend in common then. We both know and love Molly Penny.
Yeah, she was one of my favorite people in CHEO.
So for those people that haven't had the pleasure of spending time with Molly Penny, tell us what she did for you. Tell us about your interactions with her.
When sometimes I would feel a little down, she would make me laugh and make me have fun and make my life a little bit more exciting at CHEO.
Mm-hmm. I saw a picture of you and you're wearing headphones. What kind of music do you like to listen to?
I like listening to Billie Eilish and pop music.
I love Billie Eilish. So you and I both know Molly Penny, and we both like Billie Eilish. I love it. So you're 11 years old now. When's your birthday? When's the big number 12?
November 27th.
That's one of my favorite days of the year. It's because I am so happy to see that you're healthy, and it's really amazing. The CHEO Telethon is obviously a big part of our city coming up this weekend. Jodie, how do your family sort of rally around CHEO during this important time?
Oh, well, it's interesting that you asked that because you'll see Amina probably at some points on the telethon. It's a big event in our household every year. We try to make appearances on there, and we'll watch it all day long as if we're watching a sports event. And it's just really... especially during COVID, it's a way to be virtually connected to what's been our extended family, CHEO and the other families that are in similar and maybe even more severe situations.
We're speaking with Jodie and Amina Golden. Amina, it must have been challenging this year to do school virtually. Have your friends found out about you being involved in the telethon?
Yeah.
And what do they think?
Well, my best friends think it's pretty cool that I get to be in the telethon and be on television and be on radios and do different types of events with CHEO.
It is pretty cool, by the way. I think you're pretty cool. I think it's really awesome that families really allow their story to be told. Jodie, if you could go back in time and think about, that moment when you were told you would have to have that emergency C-section. I can imagine that was a very frightening time for you as a mom. What would you say to yourself if you could go back to that moment?
Oh, you just sent chills. I would tell myself that everything's going to be okay and that I'm not alone, that there's good people that are going to come to our help when in need, and that they're going to love my daughter just as much as I do and make sure the best for her well-being and health. And that it might be a bit of a path, but it was going to be worth it, and we would have a community around us.
You have a pretty special mom there, Amina. What's it been like to do this kind of stuff with your mom, get to talk about CHEO and talk about when you were a baby?
Well, it's been really fun and educating at some times because I don't really remember some parts of the story of when I was in CHEO. I do remember a little bit of the people and the help that they gave me in CHEO and how fun some places can be in CHEO.
Mm-hmm. Amina, do you like being on the radio?
Last time I was on the radio, I didn't speak, I just froze. So this is kind of my first time talking on the radio.
Well, you sound fantastic. I'm a little bit nervous for my job here, by the way. I'm nervous you're going to scoop my job on me. You sound great, and wishing both yourself and your beautiful mom, Jodie and Amina Golden, all the best as we head into that CHEO telethon. Thanks for being a CHEO champion family and really sharing your story. Your story inspires so many people to dig into their pockets and really know that CHEO is an organization and an institution in our town. But more importantly, it's about the people, and you sharing your story allows us that inside look at your journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Jodie and Amina Golden. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, Amina. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Jodie. What a lovely family, and I'm hoping that you have an opportunity this weekend to tune in, see that CHEO telethon, and if there's an opportunity for you to maybe forego Friday night pizza and maybe put that money towards the CHEO telethon this weekend. Maybe you're looking for a way to give back to our community that has given so much to us. We think about those healthcare workers, those doctors, really an important time in our community to remember them at this time. What a great way to pay tribute to them, as well as we think about Jodie and Amina heading into this telethon and how important it is that we have that care. And many people are surprised to hear that although, of course, the province funds our hospitals, they don't fund the equipment inside. So all of that equipment, the MRIs, all that specialized equipment comes from donors. So that is you. That is, corporations in this town. It's small business. It's everyone that has come to the table for CHEO. So let us all step to the table towards CHEO this weekend. I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. Stay with us here on City News.
Everyone's got their own little dreams. I want to write the next novel. I want to write a screenplay, which I still want to do. So owning my own business is something I've always in the back of your mind. Oh yeah, that'd be really cool to try and do. I end up lost my job that I had for 20 years. And I found myself with nothing. Trying to figure out what am I going to do now. I'm mid-40s and, I got a lot of different experience, mainly in retail. So I figured, you know what, let's try to give this a go. I didn't really have any money. I started up with the little website. We went with that, and then it's kind of just grown from there. I have such a passion for this, it's not even work for me. This is a hobby that I get to, thankfully make a living off of. When you walk in, you're going to be overwhelmed, I think, with all the amount of licensed product that we have. I only sell licensed product. I don't sell anything no name or anything. Everything is 100% officially licensed, depending on the franchise. So I like to support a lot of different franchises, a lot of pop culture. So I do have a little bit of music, vinyl, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, you name it. There's probably something around, or if I don't have it, you let me know and I'll do whatever I can to, try and find it for you. I do some comic books. A lot of the interesting things that I do are items that you just don't find anywhere else. I probably have the best selection of pop culture cookbooks. So cookbooks from Walking Dead and Downton Abbey and Orange is the New Black, Hannibal, Marvel, Wonder Woman. I've got the best selection of Star Trek ships in the city. Well, actually, I've got the best selection in the country. I'm the only retailer in Canada that deals directly with the company Eagle Moss. I've got the best variety of Pop Funko figures within the city. I got the best prices, hands down. Even some of my action figures that I sell that are available at Walmart and Toys R Us, I'm cheaper than them, which is a lot of times you don't realize it. So even that small business can offer you a great value.
Pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. It has been a very busy week. Lots of really big stories, of course. One big story we want to talk about is sports related, so we know who to go to, and that's Steve Warne, veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster and host of Sens Nation podcast. How are you, Steve?
I'm very good, Sam. How are you?
Good. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I'm sure you're enjoying all the NHL playoff time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was a great first round. It was certainly unique to see all the Canadian teams, getting it on all together in the same division as a one-off. They'll probably, next season, they'll go back to the Atlantic division and the normal things, but this has been all quite unique and certainly some interesting results as well to see Montreal and Winnipeg here in the second round coming out of the North. I think is a surprise to a lot of people. So, yeah, there's lots of interesting things going on right now in sports.
And, of course, earlier in the week, those Leafs fans had their hearts broken. Do you think there's truly a curse, like so many people say, Steve?
Well, I am superstitious, but I'm not necessarily a believer in curses. But it is uncanny that no matter the circumstances, Toronto seems to find itself out of the playoffs after round one. You can take away the cup drought since 1967. Just look at the more recent history, and this club has not gotten out of the first round. They've either not made the playoffs or not gotten out of the first round, and it's happened every year since, 2004 now. And the only thing I can think of, because I don't believe in curses, that it's not an easy market to play in. You've constantly got this whole drought thing, this whole idea, like you're talking about right now, the idea of a curse. I think you can't help but kind of absorb that. And every single day, the throng of Toronto media is on you, breaking down the minutia of your game, of your team's game, and what's wrong now. I wonder if that doesn't rub off somewhat and just add an extra layer of pressure that maybe other teams don't have to deal with.
A really interesting point for sure. I remember, and I'm trying to think who the player it is, and you might know the story I'm speaking about. But there was a player that played for the Leafs, and then I think he was drafted and played for Tampa. And he said the difference going from such a hockey town like Toronto to a town like Tampa, he's like, I couldn't walk around downtown Toronto, and in Tampa, no one knows who I am. So I think there's some validity to that.
Yeah, I think there certainly is. I mean, it's, I'm not sure of the player you're talking about, maybe a Darcy Tucker or a Rob Salminer who played for both of those teams, but you can certainly see what a difference that would be. And just, socially speaking, you're never really away from your job. Somebody is constantly, in the good times, it would probably be the best place to play in Toronto. I was talking with Russ Courtnall about that a couple of weeks ago. When things are good in Toronto, it's the best place to play, and that would probably apply to Montreal as well. But if things aren't going well, and they generally don't in Toronto, then it's got to be a kind of a dark cloud over you pretty much 24/7 because you really can't get away from it.
For sure, absolutely. I know our listeners are saying to themselves, Sam, ask him about the hit on Jake Evans.
Well, yeah, it's a tough one because it's such an awful-looking hit. I'm probably not as angry at Mark Scheifele as most people are, but... Scheifele's not a goon for one. He's a veteran player. He's got a great reputation. It's not something you just throw in the garbage and say, that's a terrible human being or that guy's out there trying to hurt people. I know it's not a popular decision, but I think he's trying to stop a huge goal from being scored in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think it was all kind of a perfect storm. It's really, really unfortunate. But again, if Evans scores there, the Jets lose that game. And Scheifele needs to stop it. He has to make a choice that every defender has to make on every play. Do I play the puck or do I take the body? Both are perfectly legal. And people have watched it in slow motion and say, well, he could have stopped that goal with a poke check. And they're probably right. But that doesn't mean that Scheifele's got an intent to injure there. I think he just simply chose to take the body. And in slow motion, the decision looks really easy. If Scheifele had slow motion, he could have seen that. He would have noticed that Evans had his head down too. So I honestly think it's a decision Scheifele made in a split second. The moment Weber began his wraparound attempt, and that took about 1 second. And end of the day, it was a bad decision. It was bad because Evans scored anyway, and it was bad because Evans got really badly hurt. And so that's why I don't mind the suspension. As impossible sounding as it is, Sam, in the speed of the game, the players have to be aware of their circumstances. I'm not saying that's easy because there's so much to think about already, but now you got to take stock of how fast you're going, as Scheifele was. You have to be able to monitor whether your opponent has their head up, and Evans didn't. And if you're not certain of any of those things, you can't choose to go in for the big hit anymore. Because it's not 1995 anymore. We know about concussions, and if you throw that hit and injury results, that's on you. But I'm just not going to burn Scheifele at the stake like some people are. I think he had hard competitive hockey on his mind, not intent to injure.
And I think there was an interesting part of this story that I really want to stop and talk about is that when you're, and once again, obviously I'm not a hockey player, Steve, but when you're in that game, I can imagine it's all about the game. There was a player that stepped forward, and I'd love you to sort of share with our listeners if they haven't seen the hit, and really tried to protect Evans in terms of after the hit. That really was a leadership moment. Did you feel that way?
Sam, it was one of the best things I've seen in this hockey season, to be honest, because there's this ongoing engagement
among hockey fans, because some people grew up on Don Cherry, right, and Rock'em Sock'em Hockey, and celebrated these mammoth hits, concussions be damned. And then there's a new wave of, being more careful, showing more respect, which is the better path, I think. And to see what Nikolai Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets did there, while everybody else was going into the scrum, some trying to get at Scheifele, some trying to defend Scheifele, just all thinking about that, you had Evans crumpled on the ice unconscious. And here's an opposing player from the Winnipeg Jets in Ehlers who comes across and acts as this dam, as this barrier between the melee and Evans lying on the ice. I thought it was one of the best things I've seen in hockey, and that's the respect level that needs to be there at every level of the game. Because right now we're going through an evolution. The culture of hockey has celebrated this rugged, borderline dirty stuff for 100 years. And you've even got Bantam AAA coaches out there celebrating hits like that every day, even today, all across Canada. The respect level, if Nikolai Ehlers is any indication of where we're going based on that unbelievable photo, by the way, worth looking up online, if he's any example of where the respect level in hockey is going, I'm all for it, and I celebrate that.
I do too. I was actually really emotional when I sort of watched it. I think it was the second or third time I actually watched it with Andrew Boyle here, of course, from City News. We were watching it together, and that third or fourth time watching it, I became really emotional watching it because you could tell there was something very special happening there. We only have about a minute left. Let's talk CFL, and let's talk about Edmonton. A big name change.
Yeah, it's really been an interesting storyline to watch. Because to go from the Edmonton Eskimos to the Edmonton Elks, it's interesting because just last year, the team did a big research study and interviewed Inuit leaders trying to decide, okay, should we keep this name or not? Is it offensive or is it not? And so they came away and said, no, we're going to keep the name. So either that was some seriously bad research or things have changed dramatically in a very short time. In any event, my book is two things, Sam. If it's offending a group of people, stop using it. And by the way, stop naming teams after people. Mm-hmm. So they've gone with the Edmonton Elks, and I guess they had 7 name changes they could have gone to: Evergreens, Evergolds, Eclipse, Elkhounds, Eagles, and Elements. I might have gone Eagles because I like the classic names, but Elk seems fine to me.
It does. Seems very Canadian, doesn't it, Steve?
It really does.
Steve Warne, veteran Ottawa broadcaster, of course. We always enjoy our time with you. Thank you so much for joining us here on City News.
Thank you, Sam.
When we come back, it's the Queen's Park Review, and we only have about 150 topics to talk to them about. So you'll definitely want to join us here on City News.
for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, the 4th of June. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Nice bright sunshine and warm. 22 degrees with a Humidex reading 27. Here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa police questioning a suspect in connection with an Amber Alert for a missing baby. The baby girl was found safe this morning, not far from where she went missing. As the baby had to be fed through a tube, there was a heightened sense of urgency, but police say there are no concerns for her health.
Right now, the baby is being examined at the hospital, but we don't. There's no concern for the baby's health at this point.
That's Constable Martin Dompierre, who says police were called around 11:15 last night about a missing 11-month-old in the area of Carling and Pinecrest. Police have confirmed a person in custody is the person in the photo released by police as described as a person of interest. Stay with City News as we update this continuing and developing story. Provincial health officials report 52 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa out of 914 new cases across Ontario. There were 19 new deaths in the province reported today due to COVID-19. Elsewhere locally, Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirms no new cases. That's a second straight day for that health unit. The province is reporting no new cases in Eastern Ontario. One new case in Renfrew County. Local health units update their numbers in the afternoon. And Nova Scotia's Sabeganagani First Nation will begin an investigation this weekend on the grounds of a former residential school. Chief Mike Sack says the work at the former Shubenacadie Indian Residential School site has been top of mind for many years. He says the recent discovery of remains of more than 200 Indigenous children at a former residential school in Kamloops, BC, has brought a renewed sense of urgency. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for tuning in to City News. Of course, we're bringing all the breaking news to you each and every day here. This time every week on the Rob Snow Show, we talk to the Queen's Park Review, and we've got John Fraser with us, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, and Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins. How are you both?
Fine. Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Always great to chat with you. We're going to look out as well. David Piccini is going to be calling PC MPP for Northumberland-Peterborough South. We're going to be waiting for him as well, but let's chat. Before we hear from David, let's talk about a lot of the big news stories, of course, from this week. Gilles Bisson, the news out of British Columbia in Kamloops regarding 215 children, their remains found in a mass grave at a residential school, certainly rocked this country. This is something that has also been brought by your colleague to Queen's Park at this time and to Ontarians.
Yeah, Saul Mamakwa, who represents a far northern riding in Ontario, himself a member from the Kingfisher Reserve and also a residential school survivor. The unfortunate part about this story is, this has been suspected for a long time, not just in BC, but in various places across Canada. I used to represent the James and the Hudson's Bay in my previous riding, and I've had to work with families and the church and others in order to exhume bodies, in order to get them back to their home communities. And some of the bodies that we worked in getting exhumed were children, teenagers, mind you, not young children, but younger teenagers, who they said, the officials, that the person wandered off and died as a result of exposure because they were trying to get away from residential schools and back to their communities. So this is not something that is new to First Nations. And I want to say one other thing. It's very painful for them. I was with Saul last night at Queen's Park having a conversation about this very issue. And the one thing that he says he was just surprised to what degree this has been emotional for him and many of his friends and family who have survived the residential school syndrome. So keep that in mind. This is very personal for them.
Thank you so much, Gilles, for that. A lot of Canadians, this is on the minds of so many, and of course, the Indigenous community, as you mentioned. Many Canadians are asking our political leaders at this time to really not politicize this, to ensure that this is Indigenous-led, that all politics are put aside, and let's get this done in terms of searching those 130 residential schools. John Fraser, where do you stand on that issue?
Well, no, I think, first off, it is, and you can see that it's very painful for the community, and it's part of our history that we have to face and understand. But more importantly, I agree with all the things that our colleague Saul outlined in his remarks on Monday, which were very moving. And there needs to be an investigation on all residential school grounds. It's responsibility of the federal government. I think the provincial government needs to participate as well, too. And it's also about what we do right now. So we have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and their recommendations. And it's our responsibility as legislators and representatives of the people to see that we fulfill those. And there's a lot of work to be done there.
Well, we've got David Piccini with us now, PC MPP for Northumberland-Peterborough South. What are you hearing with your colleagues, the Conservative Party, from Premier Ford about the responsibility that the Ford government will take in regards to searching Ontario areas in terms of the residential schools?
Well, I'd first start by saying both my colleagues Gilles and John both spoke very eloquently, and I think I would agree with everything that they've both said. I think that this discovery is a grim reminder of the pain and suffering caused by the residential school system. It's, to be frank, it is a scar that will forever be on the history of this nation. And I know, as Gilles said, it hits close to home for Indigenous peoples in Ontario who lost family. And just watching, for a moment, imagine a place where there's always the back and forth, and there's quite often visceral debate, sometimes in agreement, sometimes in disagreement. But just picture it goes silent when Sol stands up, and it's because his words are so powerful. So if I would encourage any listener to please go back and listen to his words, and and not only his words but his recommendations, that we work closely with the federal government, link arms, all of us together, and commit to a deeper and an exhaustive review of the grounds of formal residential schools, but that this be Indigenous led. So I wholeheartedly and fully agree. And I also would add, though, the community that I represent, I'm proud to work in partnership with two Indigenous communities. I'm actually heading up to one right now to join them in a march. And I think for me, and I think for all of us, that's why we listen and learn from leaders like Sol and the leaders that I have the opportunity to work with in my capacity as a local MPP, and just listening and learning. And I think we've got a lot of listening and learning still to do, but this really, the impetus is action and on this, and Sol laid it out, and the challenge is on all of us to get it done.
And many people are being very, very specific. Many people are calling for an investigation specifically into the Mohawk Institute in Brampton. Gilles Bisson, what should the next step be? What would you want the Ford government to do right now?
Well, I don't think it's what I want, what Dave or John wants. I think it has to be led by the Indigenous community. This has got to be their initiative. They've got to call the shots. They got to ask from us what we need to do to assist them. I think, as John pointed out, and Dave, the federal government obviously has a responsibility here as the level of government that's responsible for on-reserve activities, and quite frankly, both the federal and provincial governments have a responsibility when it comes to, we were part of the residential school system, right? So we need to give them the tools they need, the ground penetrating radar, the technical support, the expert support that they need in order to, try to, find, whatever other unfortunate things that we may find as a result of those investigations. But I can tell you, I represented a riding that had two residential schools, one in Moose Factory, the other one in Fort Albany. And the scars are still there, and the cemetery is, unfortunately, a little bit too full.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really appreciate all your input on this today, John Fraser. Let's talk about this in terms of obviously the federal government, to everyone's point, has a big role to play. The Ontario government has a big role to play. There's many apologies that the Indigenous community are looking for, and I really believe actually all Canadians are looking for. Do you think those apologies will come, John?
Yeah, well, they have to. I mean, yes, I do, and they have to. What it really comes down to is children were taken away from their families. Just anyone who has a child, if you think about that, just that act alone is a terrible thought. Mm-hmm. It's just, you can't imagine that. I think all of us, maybe many of us in Ottawa, were thankfully woken up last night with an Amber Alert, right? Thankfully that's resolved, but just the scope and the magnitude of taking children away from their families. Mm-hmm. And then when you add to that the things that those children suffered, everybody has to apologize. Everybody who had a part in it has to accept their part and apologize. And those of us who have ability to do things to make reparations or to do the things that need to be done right now, we need to do them.
When we think about last weekend, as people wanted to pay tribute to the children, they wanted to have a way of really expressing their grief. A number of people approached Queen's Park, and of course, they wanted to lay. It's really emotional to think about. They wanted to lay those little shoes. They wanted to lay 215 pairs of those little shoes, teddy bears, notes, that kind of thing. Dave Piccini, we know that they, in many ways, were turned away. What was the response from Premier Ford and all of you when security was turning them away?
Well, first and foremost, we should never turn anyone away who want to pay their respects. I think this is a time, and I think Gilles said it quite well, this is a time when people, the impetus might be to quickly say, what are you doing and what do you think? And from my perspective, I'm trying to be as straight with people. It's really not about solely what I think. I think in our roles, as John then went on to say, I think in public policy making, we all have a collective responsibility to act and to do something, but this must be Indigenous-led. This must be something that, in the spirit of reconciliation, is, when I worked in healthcare in Ottawa at the Royal College before, we operated from a principle never about us without us, and that's really, it's got to be Indigenous-led. I think I admit I'm not really aware of a specific incident, so apologies, but anything specific to turning people away who want to pay their respects, that's wrong, and we've got to allow a community time to mourn and grieve. And what was reminded for me, in the words of Hiawatha Chief Carr, when I spoke with her about this, she said, David, our community's angry. It's a whole lost generation. And John, I think rightly, drew an analogy there with the importance we pay on the lives of children with relative to that Amber Alert. I get that as well. And that's it's our next generation. It's our future. It's really, it is, there is no culture, there is no history, there is no us without our children, and to see a generation robbed and stolen and taken from their families, as I said, that's a scar it's a scar that will never heal, and it's a scar that will never go away. But I should rephrase that, and with respect to the healing and reconciliation is what we must divert our energy and efforts to today.
I appreciate the very thoughtful comments from all of you, and I just really feel like you're going to work together, and I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And of course, like all of you have said, Indigenous-led is definitely the important piece here. Let's quickly talk about another aspect of schools, and that's, of course, the announcement from Premier Doug Ford that schools are not going to be reopening for in-person learning. Gilles Bisson, this was really the worst kept secret in the province. What was your initial thoughts when you heard the news?
Well, I'm not surprised because, experts, both medical experts, education experts, and others, including ourselves in the party, not experts, but as voices in the legislature, have been calling on the Ford government at the very beginning to put in place measures that would allow us to operate our schools, because we all know children would much rather be in school than be at home doing online learning. So, we needed to make sure that we had smaller classes, better ventilation, vaccination availability, all of the things that come with being able to operate a school. And so here we are, about 2-3 weeks left before the end of the school year, and the Premier says, we're not opening. Not a surprise, because even if you wanted to open, those measures have not been put in place, and the expenditures haven't been made for it. So let's hope, beyond all reasonable hope, that we get there by this fall, so that our schools are ready and our kids can go back to school, because that's what kids want, that's what parents want. And I think that's what all three of us here on this panel want as well.
Oh, John Fraser, I can't even imagine parents thinking that kids won't be going back in September. Let's just stop there for a second, because I think even, myself, I only have one daughter who's 13, and I think I don't even know how I would handle that.
Yeah, I think, look, Gilles' right. The striking thing is that when we announced the reopening, the Premier announced the reopening, there was no plan for schools. There was a plan for patios, though. And, 2 weeks later, we get an ultimatum from the Premier to partners to build a consensus. Largely gets that consensus from Children's Hospitals, Chief Medical Officer, Health Science Table, a host of other experts say that you can do it safely. A week later, well, patios are going to open, but kids are going to have to wait to September. So that ship has sailed. And the most important thing right now, to your point, is we need a solid plan for schools going back in the fall. And that plan needs to be articulated now. Last year, we saw it come in the dying days of summer, in the final weeks of August. And I think parents need to have confidence, just as you expressed, that their kids are going to be able to go back to school safely in September. And the government needs to articulate that right now. They need a plan.
David Piccini, I want you to respond. We're going to ask you to respond after the break. Stay with us here on City News.
It's such a beautiful feel because it's all natural. I'm able to talk to a lot of people who are going through different journeys of health where they really don't know where to start, where to begin. And I'm happy and grateful to have all this knowledge where I can actually help them and guide them. So, of course, medications have a great place in our system, but even so do natural therapies, which have been around for centuries and centuries. Like, old time, ancient times, everything, herbs grew, everything was done with nature, all healing was done with nature. So I'm totally in love with all the elements with nature. In our beautiful village of Manotick, the Manotick Natural Market, you can find tremendous different things. So we have herbs, we have vitamins, we have natural body care, we do infrared sauna therapy, nutrition counseling, acupuncture, Bowen therapy, energy healing. So we're like a wellness hub along with being a full health food store. We are 1 year into pandemic since it started last year in March. It was a shock. Usually I see things coming, and I definitely did not see that coming. Golden Root is a product that I created 4 years ago, actually for my kids, just for immune system, overall health. And it just took off with certain friends of mine who had cancer or some severe issues, and they started finding that it was really helping them from different tests they had done with their doctor. And I knew I had something really special. So then I went through the proper procedure of being able to sell it. So it's actually, I'm not allowed to make it anymore in my house 4 years ago, and it is made in a Health Canada approved lab, and then it comes to me. And what Golden Root is a formulation of turmeric, ginger, lavender, oregano, and black pepper, all food grade, which is the most bioavailable turmeric in the market right now for pain, inflammation, digestion, immune system, concussion, liver health, and brain health. So, and it tastes like salad dressing. We do a lot of in-house, so we make our in-house concoctions of teas. You can come here, tell us what your health issues are, and we can blend it right there. And there's some that are already prepared beforehand for sleeping, for anxiety, for different things. And in that bar, we basically make cold brew teas and cold brew nitrogen coffee. And again, it's all local. Everything we do is local, and as many herbs we can find locally as well. If a client can't come out, we'll go out of our way to deliver it. And you're getting that personal touch when you come in. If you have an issue, we will listen and help you. We're very, very active in the community, so we would like the same thing back for the community to come to.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's the Queen's Park Review, and of course, you know what that means. Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, and David Piccini, PC MPP for Northumberland-Peterborough South. Before we went to break, we were talking about schools and the fact that Premier Ford, of course, announced earlier this week that we would not be heading back to the classroom. David Piccini, was this the right decision?
Look, this is an incredibly difficult decision, but I think the right one. And I would preface this by just saying, let's look at what we know. So what we know in Ontario right now is that while we have ICU trending in the right direction, but still high, case counts trending in the right direction, much better. We know ICUs are a lagging indicator. And the B1617, or commonly now referred to as the Delta variant, expected to be the dominant variant in Peel, 30 to 40% more transmissible than the more transmissible UK variant. So these are some of the things we know, and I really worry that opening up schools for a few weeks would amidst this backdrop with 2 million students in class, and as the Premier said, borders with these variants continuing to come in, loopholes in those measures, I worry that this would threaten, not only the summer but into the fall and just all of the immense progress we've made as a province. So I think in looking at getting kids, we know that they need physical activity. We know that the stimulation of instructor-led, and it's more than just in-person learning is critical to that, but we're nearing the end of the school, so that instructor-led can take on many forms. Many of those same teachers who coach baseball teams, soccer teams in my community, extracurricular clubs, dance clubs, and so the province has invested in the Support for Learners program throughout the summer, extending mental health and all of the wraparound supports for the first time in the province's history throughout the summer months for the students. And I think that that's really key. And the only ones here you're going to hear trying to make this about the economy or education is the Liberals, to be honest. And that's deeply unfortunate because that's not the issue at play here. And I think we've really got to look at the variants of concern, keeping our society safe and not jeopardizing the progress we've made as we head in the right direction.
John Fraser, are you taking the economy over our children?
No, actually, and I think that the point that David misses and his boss, the Premier, misses is that schools aren't just good for families and kids and their future. Actually, it's a pillar of our economy. Schools allow families to have two incomes, sometimes one income. They allow full participation in the workforce, which is the thing you need to build your economy. So it's, what David's offering is what I would call is a false choice. Like, we need schools for our economy. 2 million children are in schools every day. How many parents are able to work because of that? So the bottom line is that important? There should have been a plan. And there wasn't one when we talked about the reopening, and we're at where we're at right now, and there better be one in September.
Gilles Bisson, we know, of course, your leader, Andrea Horvath, have been very critical, of course, of the Ford government throughout this whole pandemic, and that's her job, right? So when we talk about schools and all of this, we hear her talking about, obviously health and safety. We hear about economy as well. Was this the right move when we think about forward to September?
Well, I think it was the move that the government sort of made for itself. They didn't do the investments that they had to do, as I said earlier, and I'm not going to repeat all of that, but there are things that they could have done in order to make those schools safe, in order to be able to reopen them. So the government put itself in a box. So what could the government do? There's no way they were going to be able to do all of the things that have to be done in the next 2 weeks in order to be able to reopen schools that are closing in 2 or 3 weeks. So they've put themselves into this box, and I repeat what I said earlier, is that in the end, like, we all want the same thing. There's not a member on this panel who does not want children back in school. There's hardly a parent or a child that doesn't want to be back in school. Mm-hmm. But we need to make sure we do that safe, and I truly hope that the government takes the advice of experts and others in order to make sure we put in place the safeguards necessary to make those schools safe come this fall, because who knows what's going to happen with the Delta variant. We might get by it because of vaccination, maybe not, let's hope so, but we need to make those precautions.
Let's
Can I
talk
just
about...
jump in on those investments?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think that is important, and I don't want to back and forth and politicize here what Gilles said, but he talked about investment. So let's look at that. First province to implement a comprehensive asymptomatic testing. First province to look at comprehensive masking for youth. We've hired thousands of additional support staff, including janitorial, frontline teachers, also public health nurses, in a manner the likes of which we haven't seen across the rest of this country. And going forward into the fall, what are we doing is ensuring double vaccination for our educators, our teachers, ensuring safe learning environments by investing in the much neglected. I mean, you don't fix a $10 billion infrastructure gap left behind by the previous Liberals overnight. But what you do is you do it through investment, which is what we're doing, a 400% net increase over spending under the Liberals, investing in new ventilations. 98% of schools have improved ventilation, HEPA filtration units, and new schools. Again, we're not closing schools like we saw in my own community under the previous government. We're building schools. We're building safe, modern schools with modern air filtration, HVAC systems, and that's so desperately needed, and that's what this government's doing.
Well, certainly all Ontarians want to get back to normal. Thank you so much for joining us today. Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, a Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, and David Piccini, PC MPP for Northumberland-Peterborough South. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Our pleasure for having us.
Thank you. This has been quite a week. Obviously, we've had lots of breaking news here, and City News will continue to follow the stories that you're talking about. So we'll definitely keep you abreast of everything that's changing in our community. We have had lots of discussions this week, of course, about 215 children, the remains of those children. It's a very emotional story to cover for all of us. We're thinking about our Indigenous community, and we're thinking about all Canadians. Really, really ask everybody to take some time over the weekend. If you haven't done it, take some time to look at the Truth and Reconciliation Report and what that means for us as Canadians and what role we can all play. This has been an opportunity for me to fill in for Rob Snow. I appreciate the expertise, of course, of Dave Tripp this week as well. I just want to extend my thanks to the one and only Glenys Lane. She's our news director here, and she'll be moving on. We're going to miss her very, very much. A very emotional time here for us at City News. We thank her for her guidance, her steady hand during the time of a pandemic. She's dedicated many, many years to journalism, and I want to wish her well. Thank you so much for listening to City News.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.